Chapter 95. After attending Yang Pei's Zifu banquet, Qin Daoxian did not choose to return to Jianghu Island, but went directly to Lingbei Island. In fact, it was not just Qin Daoxian. Along the way, many cultivators who had attended the banquet at old ancestor Yang's Z mansion drove their boats in the direction of Lingbei Island. Because the auction event held by the Zhou family is about to start. This auction event can only be held once every few years in the entire Guang'an prefecture. Moreover, as the frequency of frontline resource transport ships visiting Guang'an prefecture is getting lower and lower, the next auction of this scale will not be held until a few years later. For this event, we naturally do not want to miss it. Guang'an prefecture, Sangxiafang City. Hongyin Feijin shop. Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Daochuan, who had not seen him for more than half a year, and said in surprise, "You just said that the patriarch went to the branch in the West Block?" Young patriarch, yes. Already 13 years old, after more than half a year of experience, Qin Daochuan, who was obviously more mature, nodded. After listening to Qin Daochuan's narration, Qin Daoxian admired Qin Xian's business methods more and more. Uncle 13 actually chose to open a branch on West Street in Sangxiafang City. Because the Hongyin Feijin shop at the foot of Qin Daoxian was located in the east of Sangxiafang City, the farthest from West Street. The entire scattered workshop city. Now there are only a few magic weapon shops on West Street that are still lingering, unwilling to close their doors. This is naturally intolerable for the Qin family, who regards the market for magical instruments in Sangxiafang City as forbidden. The Qin Xinhe chose to open a branch next to these magic weapon shops on West Street, and fight against each other. This time. But the rest of the magic weapon shops were disgusting and broken. Those who want to play ruthlessly, the Mo family's lesson of looting their family and exterminating their clan is just around the corner. With their courage, they didn't dare to kill the Qin family cultivator halfway. Since it cannot be forced, it can only be solved through normal business channels. While operating normally. How can these second-hand magic weapon shops win the Qin family's magic weapon shop? Not to mention the quality gap between these second-hand magic weapon shops and Hongyin Feijin shop. Let's talk about the cost of both. These magic weapon shops are not rivals at all. The second-hand magic tools of these magic tool shops are all purchased from the children of various families through special channels. The price is usually higher than the cost of refining a new instrument. And how low is the refining cost of Qinjia Feijin? Almost all the copper ore used in the Red Shadow Feijin refined by the Qin family comes from the transaction with the Mer people. The Qin family used the high-priced sale of the mercenary instruments and Qin Daoxuan's financial means. In fact, the price of the spiritual ore obtained from the merman was extremely cheap. Coupled with the streamlined production of Feijin factory in Jianghu Island. It's okay for the other party to be honest and operate normally. If they want to fight the price war with the Hongyin magical artifact shop, it is estimated that they will lose enough money to make them vomit blood. And even if they lose enough to vomit blood, the spiritual stones that the Qin family should earn can still be earned, but it's just a matter of earning more and less. As for the loss, there is no such thing as a loss. After chatting with Qin Daochuan for a while, I asked him about his practice during this period. After learning that Qin Daochuan did not relax his cultivation because he followed Qin Xinhe to run the store, he nodded with relief. It seems that even after leaving Jianghu Island, Qin Daochuan still hasn't forgotten the practice habits he cultivated in his family. This point undoubtedly made Qin Daoxian very satisfied. Cultivation is something that requires constant persistence. Some people have poor spiritual roots and even their resources are not as good as other cultivators, but with their persistent persistence, they finally go farther than the cultivators with good spiritual roots. This is the qualitative change brought about by long-term persistence. If there is a cultivator who relies on his excellent spiritual roots to practice for 3 days and fish for 2 days, even if he is a cultivator of Tianling root, his ultimate achievement is extremely limited. These experiences were repeatedly emphasized by Qin Daoxian when he enlightened Qin Daochuan and the others on the path of cultivation. Encouraged Qin Daochuan a few words. After inquiring about the specific location of the branch, Qin Daoxian took the cloud-treading beast car and rushed to the branch in the West Block. After a stick of incense, Qin Daoxian got out of the car. Looking at the branch that is more luxurious and atmospheric than the East Street store, it is unbelievable. All the time. Qin Xinhe pursues a cautious, low-key and prudent way of doing things. However, this time he changed his work style and became more high-profile. But thinking about it carefully, the more high-profile the Qin family is at this time, the more these little families who are unknown are afraid to provoke the Qin family. Speaking of which, this is a bluff. Of course, it's not a bluff. After all, Zhou Muqing is the real backer of the Qin family. This time, Qin Xian's closest contact in Sangxiafang City on weekdays is the deacon of the Zhou family's patrol fleet. It is precisely because of Zhou Muqing's shock and deterrence that the little clan that was just about to move did not dare to go beyond it. Walk into the branch. Qin Xianhe, who was so busy with his business, did not notice Qin Daoxuan's arrival. Compared with East Street, the Hongyin Feijian store on West Street seems to be doing better business. Listen carefully to find out. The price of flying swords here is actually 5 spirit stones cheaper than before, that is to say, a mouthful of red shadow flying swords can be purchased for only 45 spirit stones. Compared with the previous price of 50 spirit stones, it has dropped by a full 10%. This price drop is not a small number. That is to say, the Qin family dared to play like this by relying on the industrialized production method and the cheap raw materials of the mere people. Otherwise, the cost of refining the ordinary red shadow Feijian alone would reach 31 spirit stones, and after adding labor costs, transportation costs, shop fees and Guang'an government taxes, it would definitely lose money. Just when Qin Daoxian was surprised, a loose cultivator in a black robe walked in like the wind from outside the shop. This person continued to laugh loudly as he walked. Manager Qin, good news, the Wang family's magic weapon shop has just closed. This is the last magic weapon shop in Sangxiafang City besides our Hongyin Feijian shop. Hear this. The crowd suddenly rioted. The last magic weapon store has closed. It seems that the magic weapon market in Sangxiafang City has completely returned to the Qin family. Yeah, but it's no wonder that the Qin family's flying swords are of high quality and cheap. Who wouldn't want to buy them from his family? I'm afraid that in the future, when there is only one magic weapon shop of him, the Qin family will take the opportunity to raise the price. After hearing this question, everyone joined in. Although there is no such thing as a monopoly in Wanxinghai, everyone knows that when only the Qin family sells low-level magical artifacts in the loose cultivation market, they actually have the pricing power. Once this thing is mastered by the Qin family, they can sell 45 spirit stones today and increase the price to 65 spirit stones tomorrow. And the loose cultivators have no other way than to smash their teeth and swallow them in their stomachs. Seemingly hearing everyone's doubts, Qin Xianhe hurriedly said to comfort him, "Please rest assured, our Hongyin Feijian store has said before that the price of Feijian has dropped because the price of red copper ore has dropped after the arrival of the frontline resource transport ship. If the price of copper ore rises back in the future, we will restore the original 50 spirit stones at most, and we will never take the opportunity to increase the price." Hear Qin Xian's assurance. The crowd gradually calmed down. Chapter 96. Night falls. In the West Street branch, Qin Xian and his uncle and nephew talked at the tea table. "Uncle 13, why did you hire fellow Taoist Wei to be a clerk at my Hongyin Feijian store?" Today, the black-robed loose cultivator he saw in the branch was none other than the loose cultivator Qin Daoxian met in the first time he came to the loose shop, Wei Sihai. Hear this. Qin Xianhe smiled helplessly and said, "No way, the business of the West Street branch is more popular than the East Street. I was too busy by myself, so I invited fellow Taoist Wei to come and help. Dao Yu Wei is very experienced in selling goods. After he came, I felt a lot more relaxed. The annual salary of 200 spirit stones this year is also worth it." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded. "By the way, this is the flying sword and spirit stone that I brought from my family this time." Speaking, Qin Daoxian touched his hand to his waist. Seeing Qin Daoxuan's waist full of storage bags, Qin Xianhe couldn't help frowning and said, "You have too many storage bags. It's really eye-catching to walk around like this." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian sighed. There is no way, the storage space of low-level storage bags is limited, and it can hold up to 100,000 spiritual stones. This time, the 100,000 spirit stones I brought from the clan's library only take up a storage bag, not to mention the flying swords that take up more space. Look for an opportunity to buy a high-end storage bag. After thinking about it, Qin Daoxian shook his head. Although the storage space of high-end storage bags is much larger than that of low-end storage bags, considering the price, it is not as cost-effective as using low-end storage bags. Qin Xianhe knew that what Qin Daoxian said was the truth, and no longer persuaded him. Although it may seem a bit funny to have a bunch of storage bags around the waist, this is almost always what family children do when they transport important resources. Important goods such as finished flying swords, spirit stones, and spirit pills are usually transported in storage bags. Only those resources with particularly large quantities such as spiritual rice, spiritual ore and food for ordinary people, will be transported by cargo ships. With 100,000 spirit stones, plus the more than half a year's payment from the Hongyin Feijian store, The total amount of spirit stones we can take out this time is around 310,000. 310,000 spirit stones. Seeing the 3 storage bags full of spirit stones on the table, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but be overwhelmed. Although the sum of the wealth in the Qin family's treasury is far more than the number of 310,000 spirit stones, most of the treasures in their clan treasury are all kinds of spirit ores and water spirit beads. Although spirit ore and water spirit beads are also hard currencies, after all, they cannot be used to directly purchase materials like spirit stones. After all, in the world of immortal cultivation, spirit stones are the currency. Other cherished treasures cannot be used to directly purchase materials unless you have agreed to barter with the other party in advance. The spiritual ore in the Qin family's library is good to say, whether it is directly sold or sold by refining flying swords, there is always a way to realize it. But Shui Lingzhu is difficult to realize. It can only be left to the Qin family cultivator for his own use. With so many spirit stones, I think this trip will definitely be able to buy a lot of useful resources for my Qin family and increase the family heritage. Qin Xianhe said excitedly. Everyone knows that when Qin Daoxian heard this sentence, his eyes couldn't help but dodge a little. But the excited Qin Xianhe didn't notice this detail at all. Qin Daoxian pretended to look through the brochures of the various treasures of this auction, and pretended to be casual. Uncle 13, let me participate in this auction alone. The business of the magic weapon shop is too busy, and I have to rely on it. You look after. Hearing this, Qin Xianhe came back to his senses, stared at Qin Daoxian intently and said, It doesn't matter, Dao Yuwei is taking care of the business of the branch and Dao Chuan is on the East Street, so there will be no problem. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian put down the brochure and said, I still don't trust Wei Daoyu. After all, he is not my Qin family. Daoxian. Before Qin Daoxian could finish speaking, Qin Xianhe said quietly, You followed me to practice at the age of 5. Over the years, although you and I are called uncle and nephew, we are actually father and son. What you do, what you think, I can see through it at a glance. You can't hide it from me. Qin Xianhe shook his head, then stared at him intently and said decisively, Tell me, do you want to buy that Millennium Vermilion fruit? Hearing this question, Qin Daoxian's fingers trembled. He raised his head, forced a smile and said, Uncle 13, you are overthinking it. How could I? You will. You will. Qin Xianhe stared at him and continued, Although you usually act ruthlessly and sternly in front of your clan, you are actually a very affectionate and righteous person. So, you will definitely do this. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian was silent. A long time. He raised his head and looked at Qin Xianhe. Uncle 13, the Millennium Vermilion fruit has the effect of prolonging life by 30 years. Perhaps, in the future, I can find the method of building a foundation for you? Daoxian, you are confused. Qin Xianhe sighed, Not to mention whether you can find the foundation building method for me in the future, that is, the 1,000-year-old vermilion fruit, how can it be so easy to photograph? Even if you can photograph it, do you know how many foundation establishment, Zifu and even Jindan cultivators are secretly coveting behind this longevity treasure? How can a life-extending treasure of 30 years be? 30 years? Qin Xianhe shook his head. Let me ask you, old ancestor Yang broke through to the Purple Mansion with a nearly 200-year-old life. If he can break through in 10 years, what does this life-extending treasure mean to him? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian instantly understood. It seems that the Millennium Vermilion fruit has only 30 years of life extension effect, but in fact, it can give the cultivator who is close to the lifespan, but only one step away, the hope of a new breakthrough. This value is not comparable to a mere 30 years of life extension. Wanting to understand this level, Qin Daoxian knew that the plan to buy Millennium Vermilion fruit this time might be aborted. Even if the Qin family has a little money now, they must not compete with high-level monks. Especially the kind of high-level cultivator with a near lifespan. Even if the Qin family wins the battle, they will definitely be robbed by the high-level monks near Shouyuan. For the monks near Shouyuan, let alone the shock of Qinyuan Jianzong, they will not be afraid even if the King of Heaven is coming. Because if they don't fight again, what awaits them will be death. This kind of cultivator is much crazier than the Imo family. Seeing that Qin Daoxian was in a low mood, Qin Xianhe said to himself, My cultivator, although we seek the great way, we are not greedy for life, let alone death. If you take sacrificing your family as a bet and only live for me overnight, I don't want to. As he said that, he looked at Qin Daoxian softly and comforted him. If you live, you will live. If you die, you will die. Daoxian, don't be sad. Speaking of which, Qin Xian's thoughts seemed to travel to the Zhenangwan battlefield 50 years ago. Qin Xianzhou, the previous patriarch, said these words of great pride when facing the cultivators of the Izumo country who were rushing in like a tsunami. Live when you live, die when you die. Chapter 97. Soon. A month has passed. In the past month, Qin Daoxian found that the number of loose cultivators and family children in Guang'an Mansion had increased significantly, especially the last 3 days. He knew that most of these family members came to participate in the auction event held by the Zhou auction house. Actually, the Zhou family not only held an auction event, but the major shops in the core business district in Sangxiafang City were also full of various goods at this time. Thanks to the arrival of frontline transport ships, the prices of various cultivation resources in Guang'an Prefecture have dropped a lot. The price drop of Feijin and Hongyin Feijin store is not a special case. Wish Treasure Pavilion, Zhou's Pill Pharmacy, Zhao's Spiritual Pharmacy, and even Yang's Ship Shop are all selling all kinds of goods at reduced prices. The entire Guang'an Prefecture was caught in a festive carnival. Core Business District. Zhou's Auction House. At this time, the entire street where Zhou's auction house was located was blocked by the monks of the Zhou family law enforcement team. Some scattered cultivators who wanted to watch the excitement. Although they were greedy for this scene, they could only stretch out their heads and look here. As for any unscrupulous loose cultivator who wants to go in and see the world, the cultivator of the Zhou family's law enforcement team will let you know how cruel the end of the trouble is. Of course, the loose cultivation here refers to the casual cultivation during the qi refining period. Foundation building stage loose cultivators want to enter, and will not encounter any obstacles. He walked in front of a Zhou family cultivator. Qin Daoxian took out a gold-encrusted invitation and handed it over. It turned out to be the Taoist friend of the Qin family from Jianghu Island. Please come inside. The Zhou family cultivator smiled and made a pleased gesture. The cultivator of the law enforcement team had obviously heard of the Qin family on Jianghu Island, who had gained fame in Sangxiafang City during this period. Without being harassed last time, Qin Xinhe and Qin Daoxian easily walked into the main venue of the auction house. Step into the main venue. Even Qin Daoxian was shocked by the wealth of the Zhou family. The auction hall in front of you is divided into 3 floors, and each floor has an area of more than 10,000 square meters. Each floor here, like an auction branch, is divided into small boxes. Although the Qin family has become famous, it is only a qi refining family after all, so it is placed in the C-shaped box on the first floor. To the second floor. The boxes are much smaller and more spacious. This is for the monks of the Foundation Establishment family in Guang'an and other Zhangzhou prefectures. By analogy, the third floor is the position of the cultivator of the Zifu family. Including the Zhou family cultivator, they are also in the third floor box. As soon as he entered the venue, Qin Daoxian saw a person he saw only a month ago. At this moment, Yang Gongwan was surrounded by the stars in the center of the crowd, surrounded by the foundation building cultivators of the Yang family. As the newly promoted Zifu family, especially the leader of the Guang'an Xianmeng, the treatment of the Yang family is naturally extraordinary. Not only was he arranged in the box on the third floor, but even the Zhou family sent a heavyweight to greet him. Zhou Mubai. Yang Gongwan looked at the monk in white robe with a complicated expression, and her mood was complicated. She has always regarded herself highly. Yang Gongwan was confident that even if she was born in Qinyuan Jianzong, she would definitely become a direct disciple. But in front of Zhou Mubai, the genius of Guang'an, she always felt that she was inexplicably short. This is not only the psychological gap brought about by the family situation of the two. More importantly, Zhou Mubai's own kendo talent is too amazing. Only in the foundation building period he realized the meaning of the sword, became a sword cultivator, and was listed on the list of Tianjiao of the Purple Mansion in Wangxinghai. Yang Gongwan has been suppressing her own cultivation, and if she doesn't break through to the Purple Palace period, she just wants to understand the sword intent in the foundation establishment period. In this way she can transform her true essence into sword essence and become a sword cultivator. Otherwise, if you comprehend the sword intent after breaking through the Purple Palace period, you will lose an opportunity to refine the true essence with the sword intent, and from then on, in terms of mana quality, it will be a bit weaker than the sword cultivator of the same level. One step behind, one step behind. Yang Wanrong knew this truth. Therefore, despite her grandfather's objection, she desperately wanted to understand the sword intent during the foundation building period. But the sky didn't go according to people's wishes, and the more anxious Yang Gongwan was, the more unable to comprehend the sword intent. Fairy Yang, I haven't seen you for a long time, stay safe. With sword eyebrows and star eyes, handsome face and tall and straight, Zhou Mubai cupped his hands and greeted with a smile. Thanks to young Master Zhou, my concubine is doing well. Yang Gongwan took the word good very hard, which made Zhou Mubai a little embarrassed. Regarding the Yang family uniting with the major families in Guang'an to form the Guang'an Xianming, the Zhou family was noisy. There are radicals who say that they should simply kill the chickens and show the monkeys, and give some good looks to those small families who dare to join the Guang'an Immortal League. There are also moderates who advocate to win over small families in Guang'an, especially those neutral families who are not eager to stand in line. Zhou Mubai belongs to the latter. He is very opposed to the Zhou family's consistent domineering behavior. In Zhou Mubai's eyes, the domineering behavior of the Zhou family was no different from the previous Yi family. The Yi family was the family that Zhou Mubai hated the most. Because his younger brother was indirectly killed by Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family. The two of them had a treat. Yang Gongwan brought her clan to go upstairs. When she turned her head, she caught a glimpse of Qin Daoxian who had just entered the venue, and couldn't help but stop slightly. Fairy Yang, what's wrong? Zhou Mubai asked in surprise. Nothing. Yang Gongwan shook her head and walked upstairs. Zhou Mubai followed Yang Gongwan's gaze and happened to see Qin Daoxian and Qin Xinhe. Think about it. He instructed a disciple of the Zhou family through a voice transmission. Help me check those two people. Yes, young patriarch. The disciples of the Zhou family immediately obeyed. Sit in the box. Qin Daoxian calmed down and waited silently for the opening of the auction. After a full hour, the auction event has finally begun. It was not the old man Qin Daoxian met last time who presided over this auction event, but two cultivators of the Zhou family, a man and a woman. Moreover, these two are both late-stage cultivation bases. There was only one auction, and the hosts were all cultivators in the late stage of foundation establishment. One can imagine the pomp of the Zhou family. After a skilled opening remarks by the two of them, the auction has officially started. The first item to be auctioned today is an inheritance jade slip captured on the battlefield of Izumo. When they heard that the first auction item was the inheritance of jade slips, everyone came to the spirit. Inheritance jade slips are not common at auctions. This kind of thing that can increase the family heritage, generally speaking, few families are willing to sell it. It seems to feel the excitement of the crowd. The voices of the two hosts became more high-pitched. This inheritance jade slip is a refining method for a first-order natal instrument. Although it is a natal magic weapon, but hearing that it is a first-order magic weapon, everyone's mood is still a lot lower. However, this first-order magic weapon is not an ordinary offensive magic weapon, but a rare defensive magic weapon, and it is the most precious spirit armor among the defensive magic tools. Boom! Hear this. There was an instant sensation off the field. Among all the defensive instruments, spirit armor instruments are the most precious. This conclusion was summed up in the 400 Years' War between Wanxinghai and Izumo. In the past, there were several other types of defensive instruments such as shields and bell bowls. However, as the war between the two sides continued, Wanxinghai and Izumo monks discovered that shield-type and bell bowl-type defensive instruments were far less practical than spirit armor instruments. Because the shield-type instruments and the bell bowl-type instruments need to be controlled by the cultivator with divine sense, in order to resist the enemy's attack. But there will be a problem in this way. If the enemy's flying sword is fast enough, it finds the weak point of the shield-shaped magic weapon or the bell-shaped magic weapon, such as attacking from behind or below it. It is very difficult for monks to guard against. The spirit armor-like instruments covering the whole body of the cultivator do not have this problem. As long as the cultivator wears the spirit armor that covers the whole body, there is no need to use divine sense, just instill infuriating energy, and the spirit armor will provide the cultivator with all-round protection, which is very convenient. At this time, unless the enemy breaks through the spirit armor, it is absolutely impossible to damage the cultivator's body. Chapter 98. Look at the lively atmosphere at the scene. The two Zhou cultivators on the stage said loudly, "The first-order natal magic tool inheritance jade slip. The starting price is 30,000 spirit stones, and each increase must not be less than 1,000 spirit stones, and the auction begins." Boom! A deep bell rang throughout the auction hall. Compared with the auction hammer in the auction branch, the Zhou family's main auction venue uses the method of ringing the bell to calculate the auction frequency. 30,000 spirit stones. 31,000 spirit stones. 35,000 spirit stones. Soon the price soared to 40,000 spirit stones. Normally, the inheritance of the first-order magic tool is not worth 30,000 spirit stones at all, and whether the second-order magic tool inheritance of the Qin family can be worth 30,000 spirit stones is difficult to say, let alone the inheritance of the first-order magic tool. But the inheritance of this first-order magic weapon auction today is different. It is not only the precious natal magic weapon in the magic weapon, but also the spiritual armor-type defensive magic weapon, and its value is even higher. In the immortal world, according to different functions, the instruments can be divided into offensive, defensive, auxiliary and other miscellaneous types. And according to the versatility, it can be divided into two kinds of ordinary instruments and natal instruments. Ordinary instruments are instruments that any cultivator can use in their hands. For example, the various instruments in the Qin family's second-order instrument inheritance are all common instruments. The natal magic weapon can also be called an exclusive magic weapon. This instrument has two properties. First, it can only be used by one cultivator, that is, the owner of the natal instrument can only use it and other cultivators cannot use it. In this way, the advantage of the natal magic weapon is that even if the monk is killed or captured, there is no need to worry that the magic weapon will be used by the enemy because others cannot use it. Second, natal instruments can theoretically be upgraded infinitely. There are two ways to upgrade the natal magic weapon. In the first method, monks use true qi, true yuan, or mana to cultivate them every day. Over time, perhaps after a few hundred years of accumulation in the Dantian qi si, it is possible to improve the rank of the instruments. The second method is more practical. The cultivator must invite an artifact refiner to add various more advanced materials to upgrade the rank of this natal magic weapon. Of course, in addition to these limitations, the power of monks using natal magic tools is naturally stronger than ordinary magic tools, and more importantly, the use of natal magic tools consumes less infuriating energy. If it is said that the monks will consume a lot of infuriating energy when using ordinary magic tools, using the natal magic tools can save at least half of the energy, that is, it will cost 5 points of infuriating energy. This feature greatly improves the cultivator's combat durability. Speaking of which, the natal magic tool seems to have almost no shortcomings except for some limitations. So why is it that in the world of immortality common magic tools still occupy the mainstream? The reason is that the natal instruments generally have to be built by the monks themselves, which requires the owner of the natal instruments to be a refiner. Of course, a craftsman can also create magical instruments for others, but the premise is that a craftsman must thoroughly understand everything about this cultivator, including his Dantian qi si body veins and even the sea of knowledge. This means that the monk has to expose all his secrets to outsiders. How many monks in the world dare to do this? Even if there are monks who are not afraid of other people's calculations, they dare to do so. At least you have to ask a refiner to make it for you personally, right? In general, apart from big families and sects, there are a few loose cultivators who have this ability. Can you invite a distinguished craftsman to customize your own life-changing instruments? This is the biggest reason why natal instruments are difficult to popularize. Less than half a cup of tea. The price of this first-order magic weapon inheritance jade slip has soared to 50,000 spirit stones, and the price is still rising. In the past, Qin Daoxian felt that the loose cultivators were really poor, but now he only felt that the family cultivators were really rich. 50,000 spirit stones, even if the Qin family spends so much money, they have to be weighed. And these foundation-building families and even the qi refining families on the field are constantly competing. However, although the qi refining family has the largest number, the number of competition is obviously less. See, the price soared to 50,000. Qin Daoxian no longer hesitated and immediately raised the price to 55,000 spirit stones. Bing 1376 box bid 55,000 spirit stones, is there any higher bid? Really? Instantly increased the price of 5,000 spirit stones, scaring off a bunch of refining clan and foundation building clan. The field was quiet for a moment. 60,000 spirit stones. The new offer once again broke the silence of the venue. 65,000 spirit stones. Qin Daoxian bid again. This time, the venue finally quieted down and no one continued to bid. Obviously, the purchase of 65,000 spirit stones for a first-order defensive magic weapon inheritance is a bit beyond the range of everyone. This is already more expensive than a foundation establishment dan. With this spare money, it is better to buy a foundation establishment pill and find a way to promote the monks in the clan to the foundation establishment stage. Although an ordinary qi refining family is promoted to a foundation building family, the improvement of the family background will not be too obvious. But at least the name sounds better, and others can take a high look when interacting with the major families in Guang'an Prefecture. As for other changes, generally none. A foundation establishment cultivator can't change anything at all in Guang'an Mansion, and a Z Mansion cultivator is about the same. 65,000 spirit stones for the first time, 65,000 spirit stones for the second time, 65,000 spirit stones for the third time. Congratulations to the Taoist friends in Box B1376. This first-order magic weapon inheritance jade slip, it's yours. Boom. Hearing the bell at the venue, Qin Daoxuan's heart was relieved. Got it. The first lot was bought at a high price of 65,000 spirit stones, which was undoubtedly a good start for Zhou's auction house. The two Zhou family cultivators on the stage also became slightly excited. Next, the second lot. As time flows, pieces of precious treasures were moved to the auction stage by the Zhou family. Among them are third-order or even fourth-order spiritual ores, as well as high-level treasured elixir, high-level magic tools, spiritual pills, various exercises, spell inheritance, and inheritance of 100 arts of immortality. Qin Daoxian saw needles in the seams and he made many shots and gained a lot. But at the same time, his pockets were also shrinking. The 310,000 spirit stones have been spent so far, and there are only less than 100,000 left, and more than 200,000 spirit stones have been thrown out. The auction event went on for 5 hours and it was only halfway through. It is also a loss that everyone is at least a chi-refining cultivator, otherwise they will be ordinary mortals. Even sitting at the venue for so long, I would have made my eyes dizzy from hunger. Qin Daoxian made a rough estimate. Such a long time. Zhou's auction house has auctioned at least tens of millions of spiritual stone treasures. It has to be said that the flow of funds of the big family is extremely terrifying. Zhou's auction house is only one of the Zhou family's properties. Of course, an auction of today's scale can only be held once in a few years by the Zhou family. And many treasures inside are provided by frontline resource transport ships. In other words, most of the income here is estimated to belong to Qinyuan Jianzong. It's just that the Zhou family did get a big share of the pie. Was thinking. Another lot on the auction table was pushed up. This lot was locked in a cage. As the silk cloth on the cage was lifted, a female cultivator whose hands and feet were shackled and her dantian was imprisoned appeared in front of everyone. The next item to be auctioned is a foundation building fairy from Izumo. On the auction table, the Zhou family's male cultivator showed a smile that a man could understand and introduced. This Izumo country foundation building fairy is from an alchemy family of Izumo country, not the cauldron that everyone thinks, but a real alchemy master. In other words, this is a living pill. Ha 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 ha. Hearing this introduction, the audience burst into wanton laughter. Wan Xinghai, especially Zhangzhou cultivator, hated the Izumo cultivator extremely. At this moment, seeing the dejected appearance of this base-building fairy, who is usually aloof, everyone suddenly laughed happily. Inside the cage made of special metal material. After the female cultivator Izumo heard the laughter of the people present, her beautiful eyes were about to burst into flames. But at this moment not only was her dantian imprisoned, her hands and feet were tied, but her whole body was casted on spells and she couldn't move at all. Simply. She closed her eyes and silently mobilized the true essence in her dantian, trying to break through the blockade of imprisonment. Next, the auction price of this living pill is Chapter 99. 100,000 spirit stones. Each price increase must not be less than 10,000 spirit stones. The auction starts. Boom. Hearing this price, the audience could hear the needle drop. If you say that buying an alchemy heritage at this price, everyone may think it is not expensive or even very cheap. But to buy a female cultivator at this price, it would be too expensive. Although this female cultivator is an alchemist, she is also the enemy of cultivator Wan Xinghai. Who can guarantee that she will teach her people alchemy wholeheartedly? As for the use of Dangding furnace, there is no family so rich yet, spending 100,000 spirit stones just to buy a cauldron. And using the soul-searching secret technique to search for the alchemy inheritance in her mind, let's not say that the soul-searching secret technique is extremely rare, and the general foundation establishment family and even the Zifu family do not have this kind of secret technique inheritance. Even if there is a soul-searching secret technique, the inheritance of alchemy obtained must be incomplete and meaningless. Therefore, unless this female cultivator of Izumo is willing to reveal the inheritance of alchemy to the outside world, there will be no drama at all. This is also the reason why neither the Qinyuan sword sect nor the Zhou family have pried the alchemy heritage out of her mouth. Of course, Qinyuan Jianzong may not have a way to pry out this inheritance, but they simply do not look down on this inheritance, and they think it is troublesome, so they package the female cultivator and send it to Guang'an House. As for the Zhou family, it is estimated that they really do not have the ability to pry the alchemy heritage out of the mouth of this alchemist from the Izumo kingdom. Therefore, the Zhou family decided to sell this female nun as an auction item, as much as they could sell. Otherwise, if there is an alchemy inheritance jade slip, the Zhou family may not send it to the auction house for auction. After all, the value of alchemy inheritance is even more amazing than the inheritance of alchemy. After a few breaths of silence in the venue, everyone could not resist the temptation of the alchemy inheritance, and they began to bid. 110,000 spirit stones. 120,000. He'll give you 150,000. Watching the bidding sound one after another in the venue, Qin Daoxian silently took back the hand who was preparing to bid. Can't afford it, sorry to bother. This is too expensive. Qin Daoxian secretly said in his heart. This is just a live alchemy score. It is still unknown whether the alchemy inheritance can be pried out of her mouth. Everyone is so excited. If it is a real alchemy inheritance, Qin Daoxian estimates that everyone will have to their heads. Since they couldn't afford it, Qin Xianhe and Qin Daoxian simply hugged their hands to watch the fun. After a lot of bidding, this foundation-building female alchemist was eventually bought by a foundation-building family on the second floor at a high price of 210,000 spirit stones. Is more than double the price premium. Today, in order to stimulate everyone's emotions, the Zhou family set a relatively low starting price. For example, Qin Daoxuan's auction of the inheritance of refining first-order spirit armor, in terms of real value, is definitely more than 50,000 spirit stones. However, the Zhou family set its starting price to a low price of 30,000, which aroused even more enthusiasm for bidding. After the foundation building stage female cultivator was auctioned, the auction entered a small climax. The emotions of everyone were completely mobilized. Even people who usually have a calm temperament feel a little excited at this moment. The next lot is the talisman inheritance, and it is a special talisman inheritance, said the male foundation establishment cultivator on the stage. Took out a paper talisman, smiled at the crowd, and then slapped the paper talisman on himself. Next moment, the foundation building cultivator of the Zhou family actually disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Is an invisibility charm. Qin Daoxian moved slightly in his heart. The demo is over. The male cultivator lifted the invisibility technique on the invisibility talisman, and immediately showed his figure again. However, after seeing his demonstration, everyone was not only not excited but rather mocked. The cultivators all possess spiritual consciousness, and this invisibility amulet can only hide the figure. 4 cultivators with spiritual consciousness, isn't this hiding their ears and stealing the bell? Unless this invisibility talisman can hide the cultivator's figure and breath, then you need not only an invisibility charm, but also a very clever breath-holding technique. For example, the breath-holding technique performed by the female cultivator of the Yang family that Qin Daoxian saw last time in the Yang family is one of the best. See, the atmosphere on the field has cooled down. The male host of the Zhou family was not stage fright and continued to smile. 1 talisman inheritance, plus 10 invisible talisman paper talismans. The starting price is 5,000 spirit stones, and each bid must not be less than 1,000 spirit stones. Those who are willing to bid Daoist, please do it. This time there were actually very few bidders. For a long time, a coquettish voice sounded from a box on the 3rd floor. 6,000 spirit stones. 7,000 spirit stones. Qin Daoxian bid price. Box on the 3rd floor. Yang Gongwan frowned slightly when she saw that there were people bidding against her for such a low-level amulet. 8,000 spirit stones. Yang Gongwan bid the last time. She just saw that after the invisibility charm was matched with her breath-holding, it might have unexpected effects. But the specific situation, since she has not tried it, she can't guarantee it. 10,000 spirit stones. Qin Daoxian directly raised the price of the invisibility talisman inheritance to a high price of 10,000 spirit stones. This price has exceeded Yang Gongwan's psychological tolerance. Although the Yang family has a great business, the behavior of making random bids to buy goods has always been a taboo for the children of the family. Yang Gongwan is also a typical family child, and has been educated by the family's elite since childhood. Therefore, she has her own criteria for judging whether or not to buy something, and she will not make stupid decisions when her brain is hot. Obviously. 10,000 spirit stones to buy a mere inheritance of invisibility charms, which has greatly exceeded her budget. See, the big guy on the third floor is no longer bidding. Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Through the voice just now, he had already vaguely guessed who was bidding, but he was not sure yet. This time, Qin Daoxian was very satisfied with the inheritance of so many refining tools, talismans, exercises, and techniques. When the future cultivator of the family will digest these things, he believes that the Qin family will definitely have the foundation and heritage of the foundation-building family. The foundation-building family here refers not to those who are suddenly promoted by the children of a certain family who broke through to the foundation-building stage by luck. Qin Daoxian refers to the great foundation-building families like the Wu family and the Zhao family. Once the Qin family develops to this point, coupled with the deterrence of Qinyuan Jianzong, the Qin family will not be afraid of any family in Guang'an, including the Zhou family with nearly 10 cultivators in the Zifu. After all, the current Wan Xinghai is not the chaotic period of 1,000 years ago. The major immortal clans can do whatever they want without the slightest restraint. Everything is done with fists. The current Xiuxin family wants to mix in Wang Xinghai, and the basic rules still need to be said, especially the various laws issued by Qinyuan Jianzong, but also to abide by. After purchasing the invisibility talisman inheritance, Qin Daoxian only had less than 80,000 spirit stones left in his arms. With so many spirit stones, it is obviously not enough to buy some good treasures. Because the more you go to the back, the more valuable the auction items appear. Later, there were more than 100,000 or even hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones auctioned. Especially the Millennium Vermilion fruit that Qin Daoxian originally planned to buy, actually sold for a sky-high price of 3 million spirit stones. Later, Qin Daoxian found out that this 1,000-year-old vermilion fruit seemed to have been photographed by a complete monk in Zifu who was nearing the end of his life. Chapter 100. This auction took nearly 10 hours in total before it ended completely. When Qin Xinha and Qin Daoxian got the various heritage treasures photographed and walked out of the main venue, it was already late at night. Due to the curfew policy in Xianqing, Guang'an Prefecture, the streets outside have long been silent. The two of them rode on the cloud-treading beast car and rushed back to the branch on the west street of Sangxiafang City. Qin Daoxian is about to close the store. A staggering figure rushed towards him and grabbed the door frame. Followed. A roar sounded from far to near. "You guys go look over there. You go over there. Hurry up." Seeing this, Qin Daoxian grabbed the woman's hand and pulled her into the store. Then slammed and closed the door. Inside the store, Qin Xinha saw that Qin Dao's efforts to close the door actually brought back a woman with a rather strange expression. But soon, the expression on Qin Xian's face became serious. Because of this woman he just met a few hours ago, and it was the living pill that was auctioned in the auction house. And what's even more outrageous is that he swept over the woman with his divine sense, and it seemed like he had swept through a cloud of air, unaware of her. Breath containment technique. Qin Xinha exclaimed in a low voice. This female cultivator of the Izumo country was pale, and she obviously forcibly broke the Dantian imprisonment, causing her serious injuries. At this moment, not to mention the action, even maintaining the breath-holding technique has consumed almost all of her energy and she looks shaky. Despite this, she looked at Qin Xian's uncle and nephew with vigilance. Just as everyone in the house stared at them, there was a knock on the door outside the house. Qin Daoxian immediately pulled the woman aside, took out the invisibility talisman he had just bought from the auction house from the storage bag, and photographed it on the other side. Next moment, the woman actually concealed her figure little by little, completely disappearing in front of Qin Xian's uncle and nephew. Dong dong dong. Dong dong dong. Outside the house, the knocking on the door became more and more urgent. "Who is it?" Qin Daoxian opened the door of the shop with a rather displeased expression on his face. But when he saw the person in front of him, he immediately put on a surprised expression and said, "Senior, what are your orders?" Outside the house, an old man in the foundation building stage with 3 young clansmen in the late stage of Qi training, stood in front of Qin Daoxian. The old man is tall and straight, with a resolute face, and an eyebrow like an upside-down steel needle, which looks very difficult to deal with. The old man is a cultivator of the Wu family, and an important person in the clan has been lost. "May I ask you if you have seen people who behave strangely?" The old man cupped his hands and said coldly, "This?" The expression on Qin Daoxian's face was quite strange and he said cautiously, "Senior, are you making fun of me? Who has the time to find your happiness?" The one who ran away was the living pill score that my Wu family took at Zhou's auction house. Your Chen family should have also participated in this auction and know her value. Lao Zhe paused. This female cultivator from the Izumo country is proficient in the technique of restraining the breath, and that's why I hid a few clansmen from me and ran out. The old Wu family explained briefly. It is also a pity that this is Guang'an Mansion and it is placed elsewhere. He is a dignified foundation-building cultivator. Where would he explain so much to a small qi-cultivating cultivator? He just forced his way. Hear this explanation. Qin Daoxian and Qin Xinhe looked at each other, opened the door of the shop, and made a gesture of invitation to the old man of the Wu family. Thank you. The old man of the Wu family cupped his hands and then waved his hand. The 3 Wu family disciples behind filed in and poured into the magic weapon shop. The old man of the Wu family slowly followed behind the 3 and walked in. Enter a shop. He glanced at the empty hall of the shop and found that there was no place to hide people, so he said to the 3 Wu family disciples, "Go to the 2nd floor and see," etc. Qin Daoxian immediately stood up, blocked the 3 Wu family disciples and bowed to the old man. "Senior, the 2nd floor is where my uncle and nephew rest and practice, and there will never be outsiders hiding. It is a bit too much for the senior to do this." Finished. Stared at the old man of the Wu family. When the old Wu family heard this, his face turned gloomy. A mere qi-refining cultivator dared to speak to him like that. "Step aside," the old man said solemnly. Feeling the more and more terrifying momentum on the other side, Qin Daoxuan's body couldn't help but shiver. Finally, under the pressure of the old man's aura, Qin Daoxian humiliated and stepped aside. Humph. The old man snorted lightly, not knowing who he was looking for. He was standing within 5 or 6 steps away from him. After half a column of incense. After searching the residence of Chen's uncle and nephew, the 3 Wu children went downstairs and shook their heads at the old Wu family, indicating that no one was there. "See you." The old man of the Wu clan cupped his hands and said, "I have disturbed the 2 fellow Taoists." After saying that, he left the store without looking back and hurried to the next store. On West Street, there are many more cultivators of the Wu family who are frantically searching everywhere. Until the cultivator of the law enforcement team of the Zhou family was alerted at the end, the Wu family had to stop. Close the door of the shop. Qin Xian and his uncle and nephew heaved a sigh of relief at the same time, and then they were a little excited again. Live Dan Spectrum is still a living pill whose Dantian was imprisoned and severely injured. If you can learn about the inheritance of alchemy from her mouth. Thinking of this, Qin Xinhe even became short of breath. Qin Daoxian frowned after being excited. The Wu family couldn't find this living pill, and at this moment he couldn't find anyone either. Breath-holding technique and invisibility technique are really difficult to deal with. The base-building cultivator couldn't even find it, let alone he and Qin Xinhe, the 2 qi-refining cultivators. Thought about it. Qin Daoxian opened his mouth to the air around him and said, "The invisibility charm can only last for 3 incense sticks at most, and it will take at least 3 hours to leave Guang'an Mansion from here. In other words, you need at least 6 invisibility charms to ensure that you can escape from Guang'an Prefecture safely." Heard this? Qin Daoxian showed a figure less than 5 steps in front of him. Is the female monk from Izumo just now? Seeing that she had lifted the invisibility technique, Qin Daoxian smiled slightly, thinking to himself, there is a drama. After the invisibility was lifted, the female nun from the country of Izumo stared at him intently, and said in a hoarse voice, "Do you still have an invisibility charm?" "Of course, it's enough to get you out of Guang'an House safely." Qin Daoxian laughed. "What about the conditions?" Cough cough. Izumo country girl said, coughing violently. "The legacy of alchemy in your mind and the secret technique you use to restrain the breath." Qin Daoxian was not only envious of the alchemy heritage of this female cultivator of Izumo, but also very moved by the breath-holding technique she possessed. Because it has just been verified. He has discovered the horror of the breath-holding technique plus the invisibility technique. As long as there is no sound, even the spiritual consciousness of the base-building cultivator cannot be discovered. Is really a magical skill to hide and escape. After thinking for a moment, the female cultivator of the Izumo country nodded and said, "Okay. Happy cooperation." Qin Daoxian took out a blank jade slip and threw it. Izumo nun took over the jade slip and was about to record. Qin Daoxian said, "No hurry, you have time to record slowly overnight. Guang'an Prefecture is under curfew. Tomorrow morning I will send you out of the city." "Thanks." After a long while, the female cultivator of Izumo said coldly, Everyone takes what they need. Qin Daoxian waved his hand. Chapter 101. The next day. After a night of breathing adjustment, when Qin Daoxian saw this female cultivator of Izumo again, although her face was still very pale, it was much better than the shaky state last night. Where's the jade slip? Qin Daoxian stretched out his hand. Izumo Nun raised the jade slip in her hand and said, "The inheritance of alchemy and the secret technique of restraining the breath you want are all here. Where is the invisibility amulet?" Hearing this, Qin Daoxian took out 6 breath-holding talismans from the storage bag. "Okay, when you take me out of the city and leave Guang'an Mansion, this jade slip is yours," etc. Qin Daoxian said calmly, "How do I know if the things in your jade slip are true or false?" Heard this. Izumo country girl hesitated for a moment, then warned, "Don't play tricks." After finished speaking, he threw the jade slip in his hand. Qin Daoxian took the jade slip and checked it carefully. In the jade slips, there are a total of 7 first-order pill recipes and 3 second-order pill recipes, as well as detailed techniques for alchemy. It's just that Qin Daoxian didn't understand the knowledge of alchemy, so he couldn't judge the truth for a while. So he came up with a plan and said with anger on his face, "Why is the refining method of your elixir wrong? How dare you fool me? Impossible." Who knows, when the female cultivator of the Izumo country heard this, she immediately became anxious. "The pill recipes and alchemy techniques in the jade slip are all my years of practical experience in alchemy, and it is absolutely impossible. You cheated me?" Seeing the faint smile on Qin Daoxian's face, the female cultivator of Izumo looked at Qin Daoxian with resentment. The other party didn't understand alchemy at all, so it was purely a scam to her. "Sorry, I don't know alchemy, so I have to be careful." Qin Daoxian bowed his hands. The female cultivator of the country of Izumo was full of anger, but thinking that she would have to ask the other party next, despite her resentment, she had to suppress her anger at the moment. "Good boy, you wait for me." Izumo Nun thought secretly in her heart. Before leaving, Qin Daoxian glanced at Qin Xianhe and said, "Uncle 13, just stay in the store, I'll be back when I'm done." Hearing this, Qin Xianhe gave him a meaningful look and instructed, "Be careful in everything. Do not worry." Qin Daoxian nodded and returned a look that I understand. 8 hours later. It is about 1,000 miles away from Guang'an Prefecture. On the cargo ship Songlong. Qin Daoxian bowed to the female nun of Izumo and said, "This ship will be given to the ferry, and it will be indefinite in the future," said, and stretched out his hand towards the other party. Izumo Nun took out the jade slip that she had been holding in her hand, walked to Qin Daoxian and said softly, "Thank you for your escort, good journey." Just when Qin Daoxian just took the jade slip handed over by the female cultivator of Izumo, the opponent suddenly burst out. One palm hit Qin Daoxian's dantian. The thick real essence spurted out, releasing a terrifying coercion. But Qin Daoxian could feel that compared to the ordinary foundation establishment cultivator, her true essence was too weak and too weak. Is it the effect of the injury? Qin Daoxian grinned slightly. Just when the female cultivator of the country of Izumo thought that her palm would break through the sea of qi in the opponent's dantian, her palm was imprisoned by a terrifying force. "Idiot! How dare you play melee combat with me?" The words faintly came from her ear, and then, a sharp pain hit her lower abdomen. An invisible shock wave swept across. The entire Tsangyun looked like a broken doll, the mast was directly broken, and the sails crashed down, hitting the deck of the Tsangyun. The whole ship swayed as if it would fall apart and sink in the next moment. Pfft. A mouthful of blood spurted from the mouth of the female nun of Izumo, and the wound that had not healed became even more serious. Body refinement cultivator. Izumo Nun was a little annoyed in her heart. Careless. She never imagined that Qin Daoxian was not only a late-stage qi cultivating cultivator, but also practiced body cultivation exercises. In the world of cultivating immortals, there are very few monks who also practice physical exercises. Only a few elite disciples of big clans or elite disciples of sects will choose to also practice physical exercises. It's not that it is difficult to cultivate the body, but the consumption of resources is too terrifying, and the increase in actual combat power after training is very limited. Therefore, very few people now go to practice physical exercises at the same time. But the body refining cultivator has an advantage that the qi refining cultivator cannot match, that is, the melee combat is tough. Even a cultivator at the foundation establishment stage, unprepared, is attacked by a body refining cultivator with a weaker cultivation level, and he may be severely injured. The female cultivator of Izumo at the moment is a typical example. She thought that she would succeed in the sneak attack, but Chen Daoxian not only prepared for it, but also deliberately made a flaw to lure her into the bait. Think of this. This foundation-building female cultivator was in a hurry, and another mouthful of blood spurted out. The first battle with the foundation-building monks. Even though he was a foundation-building cultivator whose strength was 70% to 80%, Chen Daoxian didn't dare to be careless. I saw him jumping and the deck below his feet exploded. The figure was as fast as lightning, and he chased after the female cultivator who was knocked away by him. This foundation-building female cultivator would never dare to be approached by him again, and she flew towards the sky when she used the wind-controlling technique. The female cultivator of the foundation subconsciously touched the storage bag and wanted to take out the magic weapon, but it was empty. She then remembered that her storage bag had long been confiscated by Qianyuan Jianzong. At this moment she can only fight with her bare hands. Even if it is a foundation-building cultivator, with or without a magic weapon, the combat power is completely 2 levels. Plus she was seriously injured at the moment. In the face of Chen Daoxuan's stormy attack, he suddenly fell into a disadvantage. Take advantage of her illness and kill her. Chen Daoxuan's wind-chasing rain-covering sword unfolded, covering the entire sea area of 100 feet in a rain curtain. Cheng Ying's sword pierced the air from time to time, forming white streaks, beheading them on the True Essence shield held up by the female cultivator Izumo, and slashing the True Essence shield constantly. Although the cracks continue. But compared to when she killed the Mo family head with one sword, her True Essence shield was still extremely strong, it just didn't shatter. Obviously. Chen Daoxuan's attacking power far exceeded the upper limit of ordinary chi-refining cultivators, but compared with the base-building cultivators, it was still a distance away. Die. Chen Daoxian didn't care. Chasing the wind and covering the rain sword art was fully displayed, and the rain curtain became more and more rapid, and the raindrops that the sword gas transformed into smashed on the True Yuan shield. Cooperated with the continuous beheading of the Qingying sword. After a stick of incense, the opponent's True Essence shield was finally a little weak, making a cracking sound. See this scene. Izumo Nun's eyes showed a terrified look. Although she is a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building, as an alchemist she usually puts all her energy into alchemy, and is not good at fighting at all. Except for some necessary spells, he has never practiced other powerful spells. In addition to the fact that the magical weapon was confiscated, at this moment she actually became a tiger without claws and was slaughtered by others. How seemingly endless rain. Because of Chen Daoxuan's punch just now, the injury that was suppressed just last night erupted again at this moment. Izumo's female cultivator's Dantian Jinyuan was in a state of confusion. The real essence was at a loss, and the shield of real essence she held up flickered. Seeing this, Chen Daoxuan's eyes flashed with light. He immediately seized this opportunity and slashed towards the opponent's True Essence shield with a full-strength sword. Because the power of the flying sword was too strong, the white marks distorted the rain curtain. Shot. The real element shield was directly cut through a crack. Facing the frightened eyes of this female cultivator from the Izumo country, Qingying's sword turned and headed it. Who? Beheaded the female cultivator of the Izumo country, and Chen Daoxian gasped violently. It seems that this battle is over very fast, and he is pressing the opponent to fight the whole process. But Chen Daoxian knew that it wasn't that his real strength reached the level of a foundation-building cultivator. But the opponent's condition was too bad, and he was severely injured by his previous punch. In addition, the opponent did not have any magical tools or magic talismans in his hand, and all kinds of factors combined to cause this leapfrog kill. Otherwise, replaced it with a foundation-building cultivator in good condition. Not to mention victory, Chen Daoxian was not bad if he could escape with his life. Actually, if this female cultivator of the Izumo country can support her for another hour and a half, Chen Daoxuan's true energy will be exhausted, maybe he will choose to run away. Looking at the floating corpse floating on the sea, Chen Daoxian popped a spark. Mars touched the corpse of the female cultivator of the Izumo country, and it exploded suddenly, covering her entire body. Not for a while. Under the flames, the body of the female cultivator of Izumo turned into ashes and disappeared into the sea. Looking at the jade slip in his hand, Chen Daoxuan's face showed a touch of excitement. The inheritance of alchemy is finally here. Just as he rejoiced, out of the corner of the eye, he suddenly saw a white figure standing quietly on the sea not far from the Zhanglong. Seeing this white figure, Chen Daoxian only felt a cold air rushing towards his forehead, and his heart beat like thunder. Take a deep breath. Qin Daoxian adjusted his mood and flew towards the other party. Is approaching. He lowered the flying sword in his hand and said respectfully, Junior Qin Daoxian, pay tribute to Senior Zhou, on the sea. Zhou Mubai, who was dressed in white, looked at Qin Daoxian, who was standing in front of him, and was silent. Chapter 102. It's been a long time. Just when Qin Daoxian was sweating, Zhou Mubai nodded and said, Good swordsmanship. Hearing this compliment, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Senior has won the prize. Zhou Mubai shook his head. A good swordsmanship is a good swordsmanship. If you are less than 20 years old, and half a foot on the threshold of sword intent is not considered a good swordsmanship, then wouldn't you let all the swordsmen in the world have good swordsmanship? Qin heard this. Qin Daoxian didn't know how to refute, he could only bow his head and said nothing. Seeing that Qin Daoxian didn't speak, Zhou Mubai smiled and said, Little friend, what do you think of Guang'an Xianmeng? Hesitated for a moment. Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said, Senior, want to hear the truth or lie? How about truth? What about lies? The lie is that the Guang'an Immortal League is vulnerable and cannot be compared with the Guang'an Mansion. Zhou Mubai's eyes lit up slightly. Oh, you mean Guang'an Immortal League will pose a great threat to my Guang'an Mansion? Indeed so. Qin Daoxian nodded. Although the Guang'an Immortal Alliance is far inferior to the Zhou family, it has united most of the immortal cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture, and is not lacking in financial resources. And the policy they adopted is to vigorously support the loose cultivator, and use the loose cultivator to drive the development of the Immortal League. As a result, a large number of loose cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture will be distributed. Zhou Mubai shook his head and said, Guang'an Prefecture doesn't rely on Sangxiafeng City, it is the core business district that supports it. You can't say that. Qin Daoxian paused. Junior dared to ask, who are the groups supporting the core business district? Hearing this, Zhou Mubai remained silent. The groups that support the core business district are the foundation-building families and the largest number of chi-refining families who jointly established the Guang'an Xianmeng. The Guang'an Immortal League played this hand, which almost took away the old bottom of Guang'an Prefecture. Of course, not all families have joined the Guang'an Immortal League, such as the Qin family on Jianghu Island in front of you. However, as long as 10% of the family joins the Guang'an Immortal League, the loss to Guang'an Prefecture will be immeasurable. What's more, those neutral families who have not joined the Guang'an Immortal League will definitely move some of their properties to the newly built Lingrui City in the future. For example, the Qin family on Jianghu Island promised that Yang Laozu would go to Lingrui City to open a magic weapon shop. In this way, the influence on Guang'an Prefecture will be great. I admit that this move of the Guang'an Xianmeng has indeed had a great impact on Guang'an Prefecture, but I still think that they can't win against our Zhou family because they are not strong enough. Why did they beat the Zhou family? The Yang family, Wu family, and Zhao family who formed the Guang'an Immortal League didn't have much interest in Guang'an Prefecture. Now every time they seize a profit from Guang'an Prefecture, it is a victory. Who? Hearing these words, Zhou Mubai breathed a sigh of relief. Your vision surprised me more than your kendo talent. If it were you, how would you solve this problem? If it were me, I would follow up with Guang'an Xianmeng's policy. Qin Daoxian said decisively. How to say? Zhou Mubai looked at him with interest. Qin Daoxian held his breath and explained, according to the current publicity of the Guang'an Xianmeng, they will build hundreds of spiritual veins of various grades within a radius of 10,000 miles in the newly built Lingrui City for the purpose of scattered practice. Loose cultivators must open up spiritual fields and plant spiritual medicines in the spiritual veins. Long term, this policy of Guang'an Xianmeng will definitely bring them huge benefits. Loose cultivators have spiritual veins which can not only cultivate, but also supply the various resources planted to Lingde City. And Spirit Sun City can collect taxes from the transactions of loose cultivators and family cultivators. In this way, a perfect cycle can be formed. Qin Daoxian paused, but this approach has a natural drawback. Oh, what's wrong? Zhou Mubai's eyes lit up. After Qin Daoxian's narration, he also felt that the Yang family's move was very clever. Apart from using force to oppress, the Zhou family seemed to find no good way to break the situation. In Wanxinghai, at the level of the Zifu family like the Zhou family and the Yang family, if you want to use force directly, the Qianyuan sword sect will not sit idly by. This is also the most helpless place for the Zhou family. The Zhou family's fist is big, but it is not as big as Qianyuan Jianzong. That's the lack of spiritual stones in the Guang'an Immortal League. Not enough spirit stones? Zhou Mubai frowned and looked at Qin Daoxian with some puzzlement. Seeing his ignorant look, Qin Daoxian explained, Guang'an Xianming artificially cultivates spiritual veins, builds Spirit Day City, and borrows spirit stones to open up spiritual fields and plant spiritual medicines for loose cultivators. It will consume a lot of spirit stones in a short period of time, and it will even consume more than 90% of the spirit stones reserved by the Guang'an Xianming. Until then, what should these loose cultivators and family disciples use to trade with each other? Hearing this, Zhou Mubai couldn't help but be stunned. This principle is simply deflation. The spirit stone is very different from the worldly money. Although it is the basic currency of the immortal world, it is also a resource that can be consumed. Once the consumption of spirit stones is too large, it will affect the transaction and cause deflation. At this time, if the Zhou family brought a large amount of spiritual stones into Lingde City to sweep the goods, they would buy a large amount of goods at extremely low prices, which would cause heavy damage to the economy of Lingde City. Until then, loose cultivators will find that they have worked hard to cultivate various resources for a year or several years, and their value has depreciated several times or even 10 times. When you spend money again, you will find that the price has returned to the original or even higher level, and a lot of wealth has been harvested invisibly. Discover this behind the scenes. Loose cultivators will definitely not be happy. And the Zhou family's side is supplemented with the same policy as Lingrui City. When the time comes how the loose cultivator will choose, you can imagine with your feet. Hearing Qin Daoxian's detailed explanation, Zhou Mubai's eyes became brighter and brighter, and his gaze towards Qin Daoxian also revealed more and more appreciation. Daoxian, do you mind if I call you that? Zhou Mubai said amicably. Senior Zhou is fine. Qin Daoxian arched his hand. Zhou Mubai smiled and said, I don't know how old you are this year, Xian. If you return to Senior Zhou, you will be 18 next year. Can there be a marriage? Qin Daoxian suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart, and said hesitantly, I have no intention of getting married in my next practice. Hearing this, Zhou Mubai gave him a deep look and said, What do you think of my Zhou family? Okay. Qin Daoxian said a good word, and then he may feel a little inappropriate and added, Very good. You don't have to console me, I know that in your eyes my Zhou family has a domineering style in Guang'an House, and the major families have long complained in their hearts. Otherwise they would not have formed the Guang'an Immortal Alliance to fight against us. Zhou Mubai paused. Your plan is very good, but I don't plan to take it, do you know why? Senior Huizhou, I don't know. Because no matter what, we are both Zhangzhou cultivators, and even if we go to war in the future, we are still comrades in the same city gate. Zhenanguan fell, and Qinyuan Jianzong will definitely recover in the future. You said, we are so aggressive to our comrades in arms, how can we fight the enemy together in the future? This is short-sighted. Zhou Mubai shook his head. We Guang'an House cultivators, no matter how we fight internally, we must have a degree. If you exceed this degree, not to mention Qinyuan sword sect will not tolerate it, my Zhou family will not tolerate you either. Just like you just killed the female cultivator of the Izumo country, if your previous choice was to secretly let her go, no matter how good your kendo talent is, I will definitely kill you with one sword. Remember, in Wangxinghai, collaborating with the enemy is a capital crime. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian lowered his head. He knew that the person in front of him must have followed him all the way. Maybe Zhou Mubai knew last night that this Izumo woman was hiding in their Chen's artifact shop. When Qin Daoxian raised his head again, there was no one in front of him. Zhou Mubai had long since disappeared, leaving only a jade slip floating in front of him. This is a little bit of experience I learned about the sword intent back then, and am giving it to you. Thank you, Senior Zhou. Qin Daoxian bowed. Chapter 103. Wait until Qin Daoxian flew back to the deck of the Zhonglong. Not only did it find that the mast of the Zhonglong was broken, but its deck was completely cracked, and the consciousness was swept away, and the entire cargo ship was on the verge of collapse. See this scene. Qin Daoxian had to sigh at the power of the monks. This was just the shock wave of his full-strength punch, and he stepped on it with all his strength to cause such a tragic situation. If he attacks the Zhongyun directly, it is estimated that he can sink it with one sword. Looked at the broken appearance of the Zhonglong. Qin Daoxian is clear. It is no longer realistic to drive it back to Guang'an. In desperation, Qin Daoxian used the wind fighting technique, identified it, and flew towards Guang'an Mansion. When Qin Daoxian crossed more than 1,000 miles and flew to the port of Guang'an, his face was as pale as paper. Originally, he spent most of his chi in the battle with the female cultivator of the Izumo country, and after flying more than 1,000 miles, the chi in the Dantian Chi Sea was almost exhausted. Fortunately, he finally arrived at Guang'an Mansion before his infuriating energy was exhausted. Or he will swim back from the sea. Sangxiafang City. Return to West Street Branch. Chen Xianhe stepped forward quickly, glanced at Qin Daoxian and breathed a sigh of relief. He knew what Qin Daoxian was going to do today. But he didn't stop it. First, the inheritance of alchemy is extremely precious. Just like when the Qin family obtained the inheritance of the second-order weapon refinement, they also relied on the cultivators of the immortal character generation to survive several times, only to accumulate military exploits in exchange. Secondly, he believed in Qin Daoxian's strength. Actually, Qin Xianhe is probably the person who understands Qin Daoxian's strength best. Because of his growth, Qin Xianhe watched everything bit by bit. Including Qin Daoxian 2 years ago who didn't even know a single sword technique, and now he has half stepped into the threshold of sword intent. The progress Qin Xianhe can't describe in words. No one knows this secret except Qin Xianhe. Outsiders know that Qin Daoxian's kendo talent is amazing, but they all think that he has been learning swords since he was a child to achieve such amazing achievements. No one knows at all. It took Qin Daoxian less than 2 years to get to where he is today. If this matter is shaken out, Qin Daoxian was either chosen by some high-ranking cultivator and accepted as a disciple. Another possibility is to be destroyed by jealous monks. After all, the darkness of the human heart can't be more clear than Qin Xian's age. Patted Qin Daoxian on the shoulder, Qin Xianhe signaled that he didn't need to speak, and went back to rest first. Qin Daoxian's pale face showed a smile and nodded. The next day, Qin Daoxian and Qin Xian, who had completely recovered their true energy, said their farewells. Drove the family's Zhangyun towards Jianghu Island. This time, the Qin family has achieved too many harvests, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is a bumper harvest. Not to mention the harvest of various treasures. Let's talk about the most important inheritances for the Xiuxian family. This time, Qin Daoxian obtained a total of a first-order natal spirit armor inheritance from the auction house, a first-order talisman inheritance, a second-order weapon refining inheritance, and a total of 11 kinds of offensive, defensive and escaping spells. The Fire Attribute Foundation Building Period Exercise, Qi Yang Gong. The First-Order Sword Art, Gingjin Sword Art. There is also a copy of the most precious second-order alchemy inheritance. Of course, this second-order alchemy inheritance he did not buy it from the auction house, but an accidental gain which is a leak of the Wu family. In fact, it's not a leak. Because even if the Wu family buys this female cultivator from Izumo, they may not be able to get this alchemy inheritance. The reason why this female cultivator from the Izumo country so readily revealed the heritage of alchemy is entirely because Qin Daoxian only has the cultivation level of qi refining. She felt that she was fully capable of controlling the situation. Who would have known that he would encounter a pervert like Qin Daoxian that cannot be handled with common sense? The result was tragic. The car overturned in the gutter. 1 month later, Qin Daoxian finally returned to Jianghu Island, where he had been away for several months, with a full fleet of goods. Back to Jianghu Island. Breathing the fresh air on the island, Qin Daoxian relaxed. Go home feeling good. After getting off the boat, standing at the pier, watching the clansmen who were constantly carrying goods, Qin Daoxian sighed to himself. After watching the busy clansmen on the dock for a while, Qin Daoxian used the wind-fighting technique and flew towards his spiritual residence. This time he has harvested too much from Guang'an. Not only tangible gains but also intangible gains. For the Qin family, the biggest intangible gain of this trip is the attitude of the Zhou family. As the largest family in Guang'an Prefecture, the attitude of the Zhou family undoubtedly determines the internal environment of Guang'an Prefecture. If the Zhou family decides to fight against the Guang'an Xianmeng, the Qin family on the Jianghu Island as a member of Guang'an Prefecture, is difficult to be alone. This is undoubtedly extremely detrimental to the development of the family. But after seeing Zhou Mubai, the arrogant of the Zhou family, Qin Daoxian clearly felt that Zhou Mubai didn't seem to have much hostility to the Guang'an Xianmeng. To know Zhou Mubai, as the only heir to the Zhou family's patriarch, his attitude almost means the attitude of the Zhou family towards the Guang'an Immortal League in the future. The Zhou family had no intention of becoming an enemy of the Guang'an Xianmeng. This is good news both for other neutral small families and for the families of the Guang'an Immortal League. In fact, don't look at Guang'an Xianmeng's huge momentum, but which family inside is not afraid of the Zhou family? It's just that everyone is forcibly united for the sake of profit. If they were really allowed to fight against the Zhou family, no one would have the guts. All the way back to Lingfu. Looking at the Ling Tan overflowing with spiritual energy in the courtyard, Qin Daoxian sat cross-legged on a futon made of warm jade in front of the Ling Tan. Thought about it. He took out a jade slip from the storage bag. This jade slip is not an inheritance or a practice technique he got from the auction, nor is it a second-order alchemy inheritance. Was an experience about comprehending sword intent that Zhou Mubai gave him before he left. Actually, Qin Daoxian's kendo has not improved for more than half a year. In other words, he, like Yang Gongwan, was stuck on the threshold of sword intent and couldn't make an inch. It's just that the two are different. Yang Gongwan lacks understanding and Qin Daoxian lacks family heritage. Qin Daoxian's strength at this moment is definitely the ceiling among the cultivators of the Qin family on Jianghu Island. It is no doubt that he wants to find useful cultivation experience from the clan library. As for the experience in the realm of kendo, except for Qin Daoxian in the Qin family on Jianghu Island, there is no one who can cultivate the first-order sword art to the perfect state. Not to mention that he is only one step away from comprehending sword intent. Therefore, Qin Daoxian paid so much attention to the jade slip that Zhou Mubai left him. After all, Jiangxi's experience and perception of kendo is a precious treasure that is difficult to measure with spirit stones. Qin Daoxian received this great kindness, and he must have something in return in the future. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian put aside his distracting thoughts and immersed himself in the experience and perception of the jade slip. Chapter 104. The jade slip that Zhou Mubai left him was a little bit of experience. But when Qin Daoxian checked it carefully, he found that Zhou Mubai's analysis of kendo was quite detailed, and it would not be too much to say that it was a kendo inheritance. This jade slip introduces the history of Wan Xinghai's kendo at the beginning. Actually, 1,000 years ago, Qinyuan Jianzong had not risen to rule Wan Xinghai. Wan Xinghai monks used a variety of instruments. There are those who use spirit rulers, those who use seals, those who use whips, and even those who use hammer instruments. Various types of instruments are available. But now, the reason why Wan Xinghai cultivator uses a high degree of uniformity is that more than 90% of the attacking instruments are flying swords. It is said that it was influenced by Qinyuan Jianzong, but it is better to say that he was afraid of being beaten by Qinyuan Jianzong. Learning from the strong is a human instinct, and monks are no exception. After the Qinyuan Jianzong ruled the Wan Xinghai countless battles, Wan Xinghai cultivator thoroughly understood the terrifyingness of Jianxiu, who was the first to attack Jianxiu at the same level, and it was called out from that period. And Qinyuan Jianzong has a strict classification standard for the realm of kendo. This division standard is the sword intent. In short, those who comprehend the meaning of the sword are sword cultivators. On the contrary, it is not. But both cultivators who comprehend sword intent, the foundation building period and the Zifu period are naturally different. This is related to the tempering of the true essence and mana by the sword intent. Why is Jianxiu called the first of the same rank? What relies on is that after being tempered by sword intent, he has more powerful true essence and mana than monks of the same rank. If you have to make an analogy, it is somewhat like the bonus of attribute exercises to the power of true essence after a monk reaches the foundation building stage. But there is a big difference. Because of the true essence and mana that have been tempered by sword intent, they can also practice attribute exercises. This means that a sword cultivator's true essence and mana power will always be one level stronger than a cultivator of the same rank. The basic mana of the true essence is stronger, and Jianxiu naturally stands at the height of the cultivator of the same level. Not to mention the unparalleled swordsmanship and swordsmanship. The power of various sword techniques is amazing. This is also the reason why the first-level cultivation base of Zifu in Zhou Mubai district seriously injured the patriarch of the late Zifu of the mermaid tribe. Changed to be an ordinary monk. The first-floor cultivator of the Zifu is not only the opponent of the late-stage cultivator of the Zifu, it would be good to be able to save his life in the opponent's hands. The more monks practice to the later stage, the greater the gap between the early stage and the later stage. For example, in the late stage of qi refining, Qin Daoxian took advantage of the time and place to cross the cultivation base to kill the monks in the early stage of foundation building. But very few monks were able to kill the Purple Mansion by leaps and bounds during the foundation building period. Not to mention the subsequent cross-border kills. Is almost impossible to do. Even killing the enemy across a small realm is extremely difficult. Generally, if you can maintain undefeated across a small realm, it means that your actual combat ability far exceeds that of a fellow cultivator. It can be seen here. Zhou Mubai's previous record was terrifying. At the beginning, the Merman clan chief ran slower, or Zhou Mubai insisted on chasing and killing him regardless of his own injury. Luoli's father is probably tragic. In the courtyard, Qin Daoxian, who was sitting cross-legged on the Wenyu futon, then looked down. Sword intent tempering generally starts from the foundation building period. Temper the true essence into sword essence. Jianyuan is actually a special title for Jianxiu after he has tempered his true essence with sword intent. Zhou Mubai also mentioned it in the Jade Slip. According to legend, if there is a cultivator's comprehension and kendo talent against the sky, if he can comprehend the sword intent during the qi refining period, then he will have one more chance to refine it than other sword cultivators. However, even if there is such a cultivator with such a heaven-defying talent, Zhou Mubai would not recommend it. Because the monks want to build a foundation during the qi refining period, one of the biggest difficulties is to expand the sea of qi. In order to expand the sea of qi, the cultivator in the qi refining stage must ensure that his true qi is extremely peaceful. Even cultivating attribute exercises will reduce the success rate of foundation building, not to mention the true qi after tempering. The cultivator builds the foundation and takes the foundation building pill to make the transformed real essence less violent. If there is a qi refining cultivator with a talent against the sky, he used his sword intent to temper his true qi during the qi refining period, and when his special true qi transforms into true essence, his ferocity is no less than that of a foundation-building sword cultivator. Tempered true essence. Let me ask, how can a cultivator's Dantian Qi Si in the Qi refining stage withstand this kind of pressure? The only ending is, before the violent true Qi completely transformed into true essence, the Dantian Qi Si was directly burst. Expanding the sea of Qi has become a joke. Jade Slips. Zhou Mubai only sighed a little about the existence of such a sword cultivator. After all, Zhou Mubai himself is also a sword cultivator, and he has no hope in his heart for what a sword cultivator can theoretically achieve. Is definitely a liar. Forget about Zhou Mubai. When Qin Daoxian saw his introduction, he couldn't help but have a longing for this kind of sword repair. Over the past 2 years, Qin Daoxian spent the most epiphanies on kendo. It can be said that he has made it clear that he will embark on the path of sword repair in the future. At least the way of sword cultivation will be the most important way for him in the future. As for the other branch roads, they can only be regarded as the product of his leisure and elegance. In addition, he now stepped on the threshold of comprehending sword intent with half of his foot. Is only one step away from comprehending sword intent. It is entirely possible for him to do what Zhou Mubai said, and to understand the sword intent during the period of qi refining. However, to become such a legendary sword cultivator, comprehending the sword intent during the qi refining period is only the most basic one. Then the foundation building is the biggest difficulty. Of course, foundation building is difficult, and the benefits obtained after foundation building are also great. Once this kind of cultivator succeeds in establishing a foundation, it means that he can use his sword intent to temper his true qi and true essence once during the qi refining period and the foundation building period. The foundation is more solid than other sword cultivators, and no cultivator of the same level can compare with him in terms of true essence mana. To know, the cultivator's pursuit of strength is not blindly ruthless, is actually meaningful. The practical significance of is reflected when the monk breaks through the golden core stage. Why is it rumored that Zhou Mubai's grasp of breaking through the golden core stage is greater than that of old ancestor Zhou, a complete cultivator of the Purple Mansion? The reason lies in the strength. Jindan stage monks are different from the previous monks of all levels. A monk who breaks through to the golden core stage will face the first calamity in his cultivation career, also known as the golden core tribulation. At this time, if the cultivation method of the monk is the kind of cultivation method that is easy to cultivate in the early stage and easy to break through, then the chance of surviving the golden core tribulation will be very slim. How comfortable it is in the early stage, how miserable it is when it breaks through the golden core. This is also the reason why the cultivator was only recognized as a high-level cultivator by the immortal cultivation world after he reached the golden core stage. Because only the Jindan cultivator has truly faced Tianwei and knew the terror of Tianwei. After the calamity, the mood of Jindan cultivator is often very different from before. And Jianxiu, because of his tyrannical strength, dominates the same rank. They have a much greater chance of surviving the golden core tribulation. As long as Jianxiu doesn't kill himself, he can basically survive the golden elixir calamity. Chapter 105, About a Day and a Night. Qin Daoxian finally finished reading the contents of the Jade Slip. Except for some of the previous miscellaneous notes. Most of the contents of this Jade Slip record Zhou Mubai's various insights into the sword intent. And this kind of insight is what Qin Daoxian desperately needs. I just read the sentiment in this Jade Slip. He actually had some ideas of his own on how to comprehend the sword intent. Stuck in his kendo bottleneck for more than half a year, and began to loosen up. Zhou Mubai's perception of sword intent can be summed up in 4 words, blending Tao into sword. For example, Qin Daoxian majored in chasing the wind and covering the rain sword art, and rock sword art, which are obviously wind and water attribute sword art and earth attribute sword art. Qin Daoxian wanted to comprehend the sword intent. It is necessary to comprehend the way of wind, water, and the way of soil movement, and finally fuse the Tao with the sword, in order to truly comprehend the meaning of the sword. So, it seems that half of his feet have stepped into the threshold of sword intent, but in fact, there is still a gap between heaven and earth to truly comprehend sword intent. This step, once passed, is a completely different world. This is also the strength of Jianghu's disdain for monks of the same level. When Qin Daoxian saw this, the big stone in his heart was put down instead. If it was said that he couldn't get in before, it was because he couldn't find the direction. No matter how savvy his understanding was, he couldn't learn without a teacher and create his own path, right? At least Qin Daoxian in the Qi refining period couldn't do this. Now, with the specific directions provided by Zhou Mubai, the next problem can be solved easily. Wants to comprehend the way of wind, water and earth. Is there a better way than practicing spells of various attributes? Wind attribute, water attribute and earth attribute spells originally contain the spell patterns of each attribute. The deeper the understanding of the spell, the deeper the understanding of the Tao. This method was also mentioned in detail in the Jade Slips left by Zhou Mubai. As for how to integrate into the kendo after comprehending the ways of wind, water and earth, Zhou Mubai only used this sentence to describe it. To this, Qin Daoxian didn't mind either. Anyway, the general direction has been found. Are the remaining problems still called problems? As for the spells with the 3 attributes of wind, water and earth, it just so happened that Qin Daoxian bought them at Zhou's auction house this time. Don't make another trip, go to Guang'an to buy. Solved the problem of comprehending sword intent, Qin Daoxian was like putting down a big stone in his heart. But then, he began to consider the issue of foundation building after comprehending the sword intent. Compared with comprehending the sword intent during the Qi refining period, comprehending the sword intent, and how to build the foundation after tempering the true energy, it is the more troublesome problem for him. Exactly. Qin Daoxian planned to attack the legendary sword repairer. And he felt that he was not at all insecure. But in this way his foundation building time may need to be delayed for a few years. But he doesn't care. Building the foundation and casting the foundation of the immortal way is like building a house. If the foundation is not firm, how can the house be built high and stable? The same is true for practice. The foundation laid by foundation building is unstable, and future achievements are destined to be limited. It's just that for most loose cultivators, building a foundation is already his lifelong wish. As for the higher realm, it is completely beyond the luxury of ordinary loose cultivators. But Qin Daoxian is different. He has a golden finger like the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, and he has a steady stream of resources provided by the Qin family today. On the road of cultivation, if Qin Daoxian still lacks something, then there is probably a lack of someone to point him in the direction. In general, Qin Daoxian's cultivation conditions are already the top. He can set his sights higher and pursue further prospects. Therefore, he wanted to become the legendary sword cultivator recorded in Zhou Mu's White Jade Slip. I want to be that kind of swordsman. Qin Daoxian really has to solve only one problem, and that is to build a foundation. And break it down. Should be the expansion of the sea of air and the 2 major difficulties of foundation building. The difficulty of quenching the body with aura is nothing to Qin Daoxian. He has been practicing dragon python swallowing heaven. And now, relying on his physical body, he is almost able to resist the lowest first-order low-grade magic weapon. Although this physical strength is useless to the cultivator in the late stage of Qi refining, at least the difficulty of quenching the body of spiritual energy can't be difficult for him. Only the sea of air expands. The quenched true Qi transforms into true essence, which will cause great pressure on the sea of Qi. At that time the sea of Qi will not expand but the sea of Qi will explode. Therefore, in order to make the sea of air expand smoothly, it is necessary to install a pressure reducer for the sea of air. Qin Daoxian's thoughts spread out. And this pressure reducer must exist within the sea of air. What can exist in the sea of qi? As far as Qin Daoxian knows, only the natal instrument has this function, and can be brought into the sea of qi by monks. So, to build a life pressure reducer? Qin Daoxian looked strange. He found himself getting more and more courageous. But think about it carefully, isn't the path of cultivation developed step by step by these daring people? The predecessors can, why can't he? Qin Daoxian. Think of this. Qin Daoxian's uneasy heart was firmed up again. Do not. Maybe it shouldn't be called a pressure reducer, it should be called a gas reservoir. When a monk builds a foundation, his true energy will first skyrocket, and in the process of skyrocketing, it will gradually transform into true essence. At the same time, the monk's Dantian Qi Sea will also expand a little bit. That is to say, the cultivator's sea of Qi was propped up by the skyrocketing true Qi or true essence. If the soaring real yuan is just enough to open up the sea of Qi. In other words, the skyrocketing speed of the real essence is controllable, does the expansion of the sea of Qi become smooth? Think carefully. What does the foundation building Dan rely on to increase the probability of foundation building? It is not the real essence that can heal the madness by relying on the foundation Dan. But in the final analysis, the foundation building pill only calms the rage of the true essence, and does not reduce the total amount of the true essence. Therefore, there is still a risk that the sea of Qi will burst and the breakthrough will fail. If there is such a natal magic weapon in the Dantian of the monk, it can wait for the skyrocketing infuriating energy and store the excess infuriating energy in it, is equivalent to adding another Dantian to the Dantian Qi Sea. Greatly reduces the air sea pressure when monks build foundations. Makes the expansion of the sea from uncontrollable to controllable. Think of this. Qin Daoxian was slightly excited in his heart. If this kind of magic weapon can be invented, as long as the resources are sufficient, all the cultivators of the Qin family can build a foundation in the future. In the future, the success rate of foundation building will no longer depend on the 70 or 80% of foundation building Dan, but 100% success. Foundation building will no longer be a hurdle for monks to practice. Pity? Qin Daoxian thought of Qin Xinhe again. This method is of no use to Uncle 13. If other monks build foundations, they are afraid that the soaring true Qi will burst through the sea of Qi. That cultivator who was over 60 years old was unable to transform his true Qi into his true essence, and could not hold up his sea of Qi. This is also the reason why the Mo family leader took the risk to intercept the Qin family cargo ship. Over the age of 60, there will be little hope for a monk to build a foundation, let alone an old man like Qin Xinhe who has nearly 100 years of life. Chapter 106. 1 month later. Jianghu Island Industrial Zone. In a production room of the Hongyin Feijin factory. Qin Daoxian stood in front of a silver-white Rongling stove and stared at the Rongling stove in front of him with all his attention. Beside, Qin Daochu, who was already 11 years old and looked like a little adult, stood with his hands down and looked at the stove nervously. Take it easy. Qin Daoxian seemed to feel something and comforted him without looking back. No. I'm not nervous, said Qin Daochu swallowed. Upon seeing this, Qin Daoxian smiled and continued to operate the stove. After half an hour. After 10 hours of smelting, the spiritual ore in the furnace was finally melted. Tisk Guishui fine gold is worthy of being a second-tier spirit ore. With less than 10 kilograms of Guishui fine gold, it took several times as long as the usual first-order spirit ore to refine. With a sigh, Qin Daoxian operated the joystick and took out the refined Guishui gold. At the same time, in the spirit melting furnace in another production room, the refined materials of several first-order spirit ores were just taken out. Qin Daoxian's consciousness swept away, and took a picture of the semi-finished materials in another workshop. The spiritual liquid extracted from two completely different spiritual minds appeared in front of him. One ball is extracted from Guishui fine gold, and the other is extracted from several first-order spiritual ores. Now Qin Daoxian wants to fuse the two. The step. He can no longer use the melting furnace. Because after this period of experimentation, Qin Daoxian found that the spirit fusion method could not combine the auras of different grades of spirit ores. It seems that the fusion of spiritual charms of different grades of spiritual ores is too delicate, and it must be operated by the refiner himself. Qin Daoxian knew. This may be the limit of the spirit fusion method. If you want to complete more delicate operations, you must invent a new generation of spirit fusion formations based on the existing spirit fusion formations. But he was not discouraged. After all, There is no one-order formation that can solve all the refining problems of high-grade spiritual ore which is not against the sky. Put aside the distracting thoughts in your mind. Chen Daoxian held his breath and slowly fused the two groups of spiritual fluid together. If there is a refiner present, you will find that Chen Daoxian is not only merging the two groups of spiritual liquid, but also the aura in the spiritual liquid. The aura fusion of the first-order spiritual ore is good to say. But Guishui fine gold is a second-order spiritual ore, which proves that Chen Daoxian already has the ability of a second-order refiner to refine materials. As for shaping and fusion, Chen Daoxian's comprehension is not a problem. In other words, the current Chen Daoxian can already be called a second-order refiner. A second-order craftsman in the late stage of qi refining is extremely rare even in a large sect like Qinyuan Jianzong. After all the liquids are fused, the next shaping is even easier. At this point, Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. While holding the semi-finished embryo in the air, he turned his head to look at Chen Daochu and exhorted, "I mixed the second-order Guishui fine gold in your life spirit armor. Therefore, although it is a first-order high-grade spirit armor, the defensive ability it can exert is almost comparable to a second-order low-grade defensive magic weapon. So later you need to spray a few more sips of life essence and blood in order to refine your life spirit armor, you know?" Chen Daochu looked at the semi-finished product embryo in the air and nodded hastily. Seeing his appearance, Chen Daoxian nodded, and concentrated on refining Chen Daochu's natal spirit armor. More than 3 hours have passed. Chen Daoxuan's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and 70% of his true energy was consumed, and he finally engraved the pattern to the 9th level. Compared with refining flying swords, the difficulty of refining the natal spirit armor is much greater. Is almost as difficult as refining a second-order flying sword. The reason for this is because the pattern on the natal spirit armor is more complex than the flying sword. Because it needs to ensure that there are no defensive weaknesses in the whole body of the spirit armor, which further increases the difficulty of refining. Daochu, hurry up. Chen Daochu, who had been waiting for this moment for a long time, took a deep breath. Wow! 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 3 mouthfuls of life essence and blood spurted out, covering the spirit armor embryo covered with array patterns. Next moment, the essence and blood of the original life slowly merged into the embryo along with the pattern, and Chen Daochu suddenly felt that he and this pair of spirit armor had an indescribable sense of blood connection. Not enough. Chen Daoxian shouted loudly. Hearing the words, Chen Daochu's face tightened, and he spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood again. This time, Chen Daochu's breath at the 5th level of qi refining instantly wilted. Although his face was as pale as paper, there was a gleam of excitement in his eyes. Because he saw that the dense array patterns on the spirit armor were merging into the embryo along with his life essence and blood, and disappeared. He, who is also an artifact refiner, understands that this is a sign of the success of the artifact fusion formation. This also means that his life spirit armor was successfully refined. All right. Chen Daoxian took back his true energy. I saw that Chen Daochu's lifelike spirit armor was like a child, and circled around Chen Daochu. Full of spirituality. This word suddenly appeared in Chen Daoxuan's mind. This is another difference between the natal magic weapon and the ordinary magic weapon. Although ordinary instruments also have spirituality, they are still much worse than the natal instruments that incorporate the master's heart and soul. Daochu, try wearing it. Chen Daoxian coughed when he saw Chen Daochu's look of being carried away. Okay. Chen Daochu reacted and his thoughts moved. The spirit armor of life is like a swallow returning to its nest, shrinking continuously, and then turned into a ball of aura, which drilled directly from Chen Daochu's navel. Chen Daochu was startled at first. But he found out that the aura didn't cause any harm to him, so he touched his abdomen strangely. Amazing. After said a sentence, Chen Daochu's consciousness moved. The natal spirit armor instantly emerged from the surface of his body. At first, it seemed like a cloud of aura enveloped his body. Immediately afterwards, the aura faded and a full-body armor full of metallic texture firmly protected Chen Daochu. This scene immediately attracted the other cultivators of the Taoist generation who were working, and swept over their divine senses. Chen Daoxian found out that there was even a little guy who smelted a flying sword because of this. Just seeing the immature face of the other party, he really couldn't bear to blame. Let's go out and try this copy of life spirit armor. After thinking about it, he glanced at the other workshops, shook his head and said, Forget it, today will be a day off, so let's go take a look together. Oh, heard this? All the Taoist monks rejoiced. Although the workload of the Feijin factory is not large, staying in the factory every day is also a very tormenting thing. Especially these little guys are not very old. If they were put on Earth, they would all be a group of elementary school students. To be honest, Qin Daoxian was very satisfied with the ability of this group of Taoist monks to bear their temper. It doesn't take a moment. A group of Taoist monks came to a plain a few miles away from the industrial area. Just here. Qin Daoxian lowered his body. The rest of the people followed and lowered their bodies. It wasn't until Qin Daochu finished wearing his life armor that Qin Daoxian took out his shadow-bearing sword and said, "Are you ready?" Qin Daochu nodded vigorously. Although he knew that the defensive ability of the spirit armor was amazing, he couldn't help but be nervous. After all, the one in front of him was the young patriarch who taught him to cultivate and be a man since he was a child. Looking at Qin Daochu wearing a streamlined spirit armor, but only less than 1.5 meters tall, Qin Daoxian was heartbroken and laughed, "Daochu, eat my sword." "What?" Qin Daochu panicked and immediately exclaimed in fright. Chapter 107. Chengying's sword radiated in all directions, slashing on Qin Daochu's life armor, making a crisp sound of gold and iron clashing. "It's okay. It's okay." Seeing that the spirit armor resisted Qin Daoxuan's attack, Qin Daochu, who was originally nervous, suddenly laughed happily. Seeing him like this, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "Don't be too happy, my sword just now is only equivalent to the attack of a third-level chi-refining monk holding a first-level high-grade magic weapon. You are wearing a first-grade high-grade natal spirit armor that is comparable to a second-grade defensive magic weapon." Speaking of this, the expression on Qin Daoxuan's face became serious. "The next sword is the fifth layer of chi refining, be careful, hear this." Qin Daochu couldn't help but look serious. On the field, the other cultivators of the Taoist generation also all had tight little faces and looked at Qin Daoxian and Qin Daochu intently. Shot. Chengying's sword broke through the air and made an inaudible sound. Fijian's sword glowed 9 feet, like a streamer of light, flying towards Qin Daochu. Qin Daochu continuously injected Dantian True Qi into his life armor. Next moment, Chengying's sword collided with his spiritual armor again, and a louder roar sounded on the field. Followed. An invisible shock wave swept across, making everyone's clothes rattle. The dust and smoke dissipated. Everyone looked closely and Qin Daochu was standing in midair intact. Blocked. The Taoist monks present were excited. Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little hot in his heart and asked, "How?" Qin Daochu moved his arms, feeling the tyrannical aura blooming on his life armor, and grinned, "I don't feel strong enough." Seeing that his attitudes before and after are completely different, Qin Daoxian knew that his boy was conquered by the powerful defensive power of the spiritual armor. Now he probably thinks that he can resist all the attacks of the monks during the chi refining period. In other words, is just a little floating. Qin Daoxian didn't speak and told him to get ready again. Another sword slashed towards Qin Daochu. This time, it is equivalent to a full blow from the 9th level of chi refining. Since Qin Daoxian himself only has the 8th level of chi refining, he used a hint of the meaning of the wind-chasing sword art in this sword. Chi refining 9th level cultivator, as the pinnacle of the chi refining cultivator, is fully enforcing the power that a first-rank high-grade flying sword can burst. Even Qin Daoxian now dare not underestimate it. After all, Qin Daoxuan's attack power far exceeded the upper limit of the chi refining cultivator, but his defensive ability was a little stronger than that of the chi refining 9th layer cultivator. This is still based on the defensive ability he has only after he has cultivated the rock sword art to the perfect state. Flying swords are sharp weapons no matter what. Even if it is a defensive sword art, the emphasis is on offense instead of defense, and it is almost impossible to have a defensive sword art. Therefore, stone sword art is not so much a defensive sword art as it is a special attacking sword art. Is about intercepting attacks with attacks. Is fundamentally different from the pure defensive magic weapon of life spirit armor. Boom. A blow from the 9th level of chi refining, the power that erupted, and even the cultivators of the Taoist generation who were onlookers were a little unsteady. When everyone saw such a violent attack, their faces turned pale with fright. After all, most of the cultivators of the Taoist generation present only had the 2nd and 3rd levels of chi refining, which was far less exaggerated than Qin Daochu and Qin Daolian's 5th level chi refining. As a result, the air wave swept through, and except for Qin Daolian, everyone else on the field was a little unstable. For a long time, centered below Qin Daochu, A deep pit with a diameter of several meters appeared in front of everyone. As we all know, this is the tragic situation caused by the collision between Feijian and Qin Daoqi's life spirit armor. But no one cares about that at the moment. They all turn their attention to Qin Daoqiu. How? Qin Daoxian asked loudly, if you can't hold it, don't force it. Hearing this, Qin Daoqiu, who was going to give up, became stubborn and said loudly, fine, it feels like being punched lightly, heard the words. Qin Daoxian was suddenly moved. This level of attack, Qin Daoqiu actually only felt a slight impact, which means that this kind of attack has a long distance to break through the defense of the spiritual armor. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's expression became solemn. How much energy do you have left? The young patriarch, there are still more than 90%. The successive hard resistances are equivalent to the blows of the cultivators on the 3rd, 5th and 9th layers of qi refining, but only consumes less than 10% of Qin Daoqi's true qi, which is a bit terrifying. Daoqiu, for the next sword, I will do my best to use the wind-chasing sword art. If you can resist it, with this life armor, it will be enough for you to rank among the cultivators in the qi refining period. With Qin Daoxian's 8th level qi refining level, he used his full power to use the wind-chasing sword art, even if it was not as good as his strongest method, the wind-chasing rain sword, but it also greatly exceeded the attack limit of a qi refining cultivator. If it is said that the normal power of the first-rank high-grade flying sword of the 9th level qi refining monk is 1, then Qin Daoxian can use the perfect level of the wind-chasing sword art, and the attack power that can be burst is at least 2 or more. As more than doubled. Qin Daoqiu also seemed to know that the next sword was not easy. He immediately instilled the infuriating energy of his whole body into the spirit armor of his life. His small face was tensed, and he stared at the Qingying sword hanging in front of Qin Daoxian. In an instant, Qin Daoqiu only felt his sight disappear, and the Qingying sword disappeared. At the same time, Qin Daoqiu only felt a piercing pain hitting his chest. This time he finally could no longer maintain his figure, and was directly slashed and flew out by Qin Daoxian. Cough cough cough. Hundreds of meters away. Qin Daoqiu lowered his body in embarrassment, and his natal spirit armor retracted into the sea of Dantian Qi. Qin Daoqiu first sprayed 5 mouthfuls of blood, and then was pulled by Qin Daoxian to do the defense experiment of his life spirit armor. His face was extremely pale at the moment. Especially Qin Daoxian's last sword, although it still did not reach the defense upper limit of his life spirit armor. However, Qin Daoqi's cultivation base is limited after all, and he is also unable to exert all the defensive capabilities of his life spirit armor. Was slightly injured as a result. Seeing a trace of blood on the corner of Qin Daoqi's mouth, Qin Daoxian took 2 steps, took his hand involuntarily, and used his true qi to swim around in his body. Young patriarch, I'm fine. Qin Daoqiu twisted. After checking, it was found that Qin Daoqiu only suffered a little shock to his chest, and this injury was not even a minor injury. Even if Qin Daoqiu had not sprayed 5 mouthfuls of his life essence and blood before, and his condition was not good, he would not have suffered even this injury. This is a little scary. The defensive ability of the life spirit armor is more than able to resist the attacks of ordinary qi cultivators. Even an attack like Qin Daoxian that surpassed the upper limit of a qi cultivator could be blocked. What is this concept? If everyone in the Mo family had such a copy of the life spirit armor, and no outsiders interfered in their battles, whoever killed the deer at that time is really a matter of 2 opinions. Qin Daoxian felt that he was more likely to escape from defeat. Because the cultivators of the Mo family are almost all in the late stage of qi refining, even if they use the sword of chasing the wind and covering the rain, it is difficult for Qin Daoxian to break through the opponent's defense in a short time. Since he can't break the opponent's defense, the Mo family cultivator can let go of his hand and attack Qin Daoxian. With Qin Daoxian's defensive ability, he couldn't resist the attack and killing of more than a dozen monks from the Mo family. If he didn't run for his life, would he wait to die? Qin Daoxian's thoughts changed. If everyone of the Qin family cultivator can wear a pair of this kind of life armor, then the improvement of the family's strength will be a leap forward. Think of this. Qin Daoxian's gaze at Qin Daoqiu became even hotter. Chapter 108. Not just Qin Daoxian. The other monks of the Taoist generation all had envious expressions on their faces after seeing Qin Daoqiu wearing such a handsome and powerful spirit armor. That little expression almost didn't say clearly, I want to. Seeing everyone's appearance, Qin Daoxian couldn't help thinking secretly while feeling amused. The natal spirit armor is different from the flying sword. Not only is it more difficult to refine, but most importantly the cost is much higher than Feijian. Armor is more expensive than a sword. It seems that even in the world of immortals, this principle is the same. Refine a first-order high-grade flying sword. The cost is generally no more than 200 or 300 spirit stones, but the price is as high as 500 spirit stones. Therefore, when Feijian reaches the first-order high-grade, the profit will skyrocket. It is no longer like the first-grade low-grade and first-grade middle-grade Feijian, which may even lose money. As long as the refiner has the ability to refine the first-order high-grade flying sword, it will basically make a lot of money. It's just a matter of earning more and less depending on the success rate of the refiner. As for defensive weapons, generally there are very few sellers in the magic weapon market. Even in the high-end magic weapon market run by the Wu family and Zhou family, there are few defensive magic tools. As a result, this kind of magic tool consumes a lot of materials, the refining cost is high, and the price is exaggerated, few monks can afford it. Furthermore, the big family does not want this kind of spiritual armor to be flooded. In fact, looking at the spirit armor defense experiments conducted by Qin Daoxian, we can see that there is a huge difference in the strength of the cultivators in the qi refining period when they are wearing armor and when they are not wearing armor. The same two monks. One is wearing spirit armor and the other is not, unless the difference in strength between the two is as exaggerated as Qin Daoxian and ordinary cultivators in the late stage of qi refining. Otherwise, the monks wearing spirit armor will have a crushing advantage over the unarmored monks. That's why. It is because the cultivator wearing the spirit armor does not need to pay attention to the enemy's attack at all, and can directly attack the opponent with the enemy's attack. Just ask this kind of sloppy play who can stand it. It's like in ancient times on the earth, there are two concepts of armored soldiers and no armored soldiers. Although there are other factors in the world of immortality, it basically follows this rule. Among the monks of the same rank, the monks with defensive spirit armor will often win easily against the monks who have no defensive magic weapons. Qin Daoxian refined this copy of life spirit armor for Qin Daochu. Aside from the labor cost of his second-order refiner and the material consumption, about 200 kinds of first-order spiritual ores and 10 kilograms of second-order guishui fine gold were used. The first-order spiritual ore has reached 600 spiritual stones at an average of 3 spiritual stones per kilogram. Plus 10 caddies of guishui fine gold, the total cost is as high as 2,100 spirit stones. This is just the cost. If it is sold to the public, how many spirit stones should be sold? This price has far exceeded the limit that a cultivator can bear in the qi refining period. The Qin family does not have much problem with equipping each cultivator of the Taoist generation with a pair of spirit armor. But when the cultivators of the Fuzi generation grow up in the future, and according to this standard, even if the Qin family is rich and powerful, they will be dragged down by the terrifying consumption of the spirit armor. Of course, Qin Daoxian can also create spirit armor in the simplest way in jade slips. In that case, 1,500 spirit stones of guishui fine gold can be saved, and the cost has been suddenly reduced by more than half. But in this way, the defensive power of the life spirit armor will also be greatly weakened. This made Qin Daoxian somewhat difficult to choose. From deep inside, he didn't really want to equip the Qin family cultivator with a weakened version of the spirit armor. In his view, either don't do it or do it the best way. It is more troublesome to add various high-level materials when upgrading the natal spirit armor in the future, and exclude the low-level materials in the spirit armor. However, among the Taoist monks apart from Qin Daolian and Qin Daochu, the other Taoist monks used too little resources. It was so low that Qin Daoxian felt a little dissatisfied. The monks of the Taoist generation have been practicing for almost 2 years. Qin Daolian and Qin Daochu are already cultivators on the 5th floor of qi refining, and they are about to enter the 6th floor. As for the other cultivators of the Taoist generation, apart from Qin Daochuan reaching the 4th level of qi refining, the best one is only the 3rd level of qi refining. It seems that it took more than 2 years to break through from the 1st layer of qi refining to the 3rd layer of qi refining, and the progress is exaggerated. But you must know that even if the inner disciples of the Qinyuan sword sect saw the various resources that the Qin family smashed for the Taoist monks, they had to shout the local tyrants. As long as the erysipelas does not affect the physical body, the spirit pills will be eaten to death, and the treasures that assist in the practice, the first-order water spirit beads are considered low-grade, and even the second-order water spirit beads are directly cultivated. In addition, the supply of lingmi is constant. As long as the monks of the Taoist generation can eat it, the Qin family will open the supply no matter how much they eat. Unless it is some rare cultivation resources that Qin family spirit stones are difficult to buy from Guang'an Prefecture. In terms of the supply of basic training resources, the Qin family has really achieved the ultimate. That's it. In more than 2 years, they have only broken through from the first level of qi refining to the second and third levels of qi refining, which can be called waste. How can Qin Daoxian be satisfied with this? Therefore, after seeing the expectant eyes of the Taoist monks, Qin Daoxian did not respond immediately, because he already had a plan for reforming the family system in his heart. As in the past, regardless of aptitude, training progress, or refining level, the Qin family will always provide the best resources. Qin Daoxian did not intend to do this again. This kind of practice is like eating a big pot of rice, which greatly hurts the enthusiasm of the Qin family cultivator to struggle. He wants to change the training system. This training system is slightly different from the training system in which the spiritual roots of the big family determine the supply of resources, but also relatively close. Qin Daoxian is going to propose this training system at the next clan meeting. As for the expectant eyes of other Taoist monks, Qin Daoxian pretended not to see it. For the long-term development of the family, he must be cruel enough. If you want to set rules, you have to treat them equally. Otherwise, after a long time, the rules will be useless. In this regard, family monks are more vigilant than sectarian monks. Because family monks are often bound by blood, it is easier for them to bend the law for personal gain. This kind of favoritism, which seems to be caring for the kinship of the same family, is actually very harmful to the family itself. It can even completely destroy a family. At this point, Qin Daoxian had to be vigilant. There are only 11 cultivators in the Qin family now, and it seems that everything is going well. But some disasters were buried when the family was young. Qin Daoxian knew that small families depend on unity while big families depend on system. If the Qin family wants to develop into a family like the Zhou family, or even a bigger family than the Zhou family, they can only rely on the system. Reform always brings pains. Fortunately, there are not many cultivators of the Qin family now, which means that the reform does not touch many interested parties. There is little resistance to reform. If the current training system of the Qin family continues to apply to the cultivators of the Fu character generation, they will be reformed at that time. With interests being violated, there are more family monks who oppose it. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian increasingly felt that reforming the family system was an urgent matter. Chapter 109. Months later. A Lingmi carrier docked at the port of Jianghu Island. Qin Xinhe flew down. Looking at the busy harbor full of joy, Qin Xinhe found that compared with when he was in charge of the family, not only the cultivator's strength has improved by leaps and bounds in the current Qin family. The mortals of the family also seem to have more vitality than before. At the port. Around the busy port terminal, a small market town is quietly being established. This small market town is a pilot project that Qin Daoxian instructed Qin Ji, the magistrate of Chongqing County. At the current rate of development, it is entirely possible for this small market town to develop into a new county seat or even a county seat in the future. Qin Xinhe stood in the sky, observed the busy clansmen, and then used the wind-fighting technique to fly towards the Qin family's spiritual veins. After a stick of incense, Qin Xinhe met Qin Daoxian himself in the courtyard of Qin Daoxuan's Lingfu. Uncle 13. You are back. Seeing Qin Xinhe, Qin Daoxuan's face was full of surprise. Qin Xinhe nodded with a smile. Your seaport market town is doing well. I feel it is more prosperous than the county seat of Chongqing County. Heard. Qin Daoxian shook his head. Compared with the prosperity of Guang'an Prefecture Port, it is too far behind. Hear this. Qin Xinhe almost didn't catch his breath, glared at him and said, You just complimented you, you don't know what your surname is, right? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled contemptuously. Comparing the current Qin family with the Guang'an mansion, it is indeed a bit ignorant. But Qin Daoxian is not without confidence in this. Because in the country where he lived in the previous life, this kind of miracle had been created. In a few decades, a small fishing village has been transformed into an international metropolis. Although the Qin family did not have the various technological advantages of the previous life, it also did not have the wonderful cultivation techniques of the immortal world in the previous life. The two laughed. Qin Daoxian told Qin Xinhe his thoughts on the reform of the family system. After Qin Xinhe heard his thoughts, he frowned and said nothing. Half an hour. He raised his head and said, You are right, the Qin family is not as good as before, although there are only 11 cultivators now. The largest group of people of the blessed generation are already 3 years old, and in 2 years they should enter ethnology into the fairyland. At that time, once the current family system is used, it will inevitably lead to great confusion. However, what you are doing now will undoubtedly make those people of the Daozi generation with poor qualifications dissatisfied. Who knows what to hear? Qin Daoxian laughed. Am not a spirit stone, how can I satisfy everyone? As long as the new family system is beneficial to the family, I will push it forward with all my strength and no one can stop it. When saying this sentence, Qin Daoxuan's face inadvertently showed a hint of domineering. See him like this. Qin Xinhe said with satisfaction. You have become more and more like a qualified patriarch. Uncle 13, what is an image? Qin Daoxian was slightly dissatisfied. Just based on your current tone, it can only be like, ha ha ha. Qin Xinhe stroked his beard and laughed. The next day, in Qin Daoxuan's courtyard, 11 cultivators of the Qin family Taoist generation gathered together. Compared to last year, Qin Daoxian did not drive out the young Taoist monks again. Because this year, even the youngest Taoist cultivator is over 6 years old. In this world, 6-year-old children are already able to help their family farm and work, and 11 or 12-year-old wives and families can be found everywhere. Although monks are different from ordinary people, they are undoubtedly much more mature than children in previous lives. Taoist monks of different ages sat in the courtyard, just like a little adult. Among them, Qin Daochu had the most serious expression. Glancing at the crowd, Qin Daoxian said, since everyone is here, I will announce that this year's Qin clan meeting will officially start. After a pause, he looked at Qin Xian and said, like last year, let the old patriarch first introduce our business in Sangxiafang City in Guang'an Prefecture. Hearing this, Qin Xinhe nodded and said, last year, our Hongyin Feijin store opened a branch in Guang'an Prefecture. In general, the market for magical instruments in Sangxiafang City is now completely monopolized by our family. This alone can bring at least a net income of more than 150,000 spirit stones to the family every year. Hear this. Qin Daoxian knew that now, it was not the market but productivity that restricted the profits of their shops in Sangxiafang City. The Qin family can only produce up to 900 feijin each month. Deducting the flying swords traded with the sharks, the number of flying swords sold in the Sangxiafang City of Guang'an Prefecture every month is only 700 or 800 at most. After deducting the taxes paid to the Zhou family, the profit of 150,000 spirit stones a year is already the limit. Now the Qin family wants to expand the profits of the Feijin store. There are only two ways. The first is to continue to expand the Feijin factory in the industrial zone to increase productivity. The second is to increase the output of first-order mid-grade flying swords and even first-order high-grade flying swords. Compared with the profit of less than 20 spirit stones in the first-order low-grade Feijin area, the profit of the first-order middle-grade Feijin is as high as 50 spirit stones or more, and the profit of the first-order high-grade Feijin is as high as 200 or 300 spirit stones. Of course, Qin Daoxian did not plan to produce the first-order high-grade flying sword, because this thing is very difficult to sell in the loose workshop market. The profit of the first-order high-grade instruments is high, but the Qin family has to take into account the purchasing power of the loose cultivators. If it is placed in the core business area, there is still a market for the first-order high-grade Feijin. However, the magic weapon market in the core business district is basically monopolized by the Zhou family and the Wu family. If the Qin family wants to get in, they must fight with the Zhou and Wu families. This is what Qin Daoxian does not want to see for the time being. What he wants to do most now is to fully develop the magic weapon market in Sangxiafang City. Because as long as the market for magical instruments in Sangxiafang City is fully developed, the benefits of this piece alone will allow the Qin family to live quite well. There are only 700 or 800 flying swords a month, which is far from enough to satisfy the market of scattered cultivation instruments. After talking about the family's most important flying sword business, Qin Daoxian coughed and said, after talking about the production and sales of the family's flying swords, let's talk about the cultivation system of the monks within the family that everyone is most concerned about. Hear this. Everyone straighten their spines. I know that for more than a year, everyone has worked hard to produce Feijin at the Feijin factory day and night. Here, on behalf of the family, I would like to thank you for your efforts. Having said that, Qin Daoxian stood up and bowed his hands to everyone. See, everyone stood up one after another and returned the salute to Qin Daoxian. All sit down. Qin Daoxian stretched out his hand. Hearing this, everyone hesitated and sat down again. But for some reason, everyone felt a little nervous in their hearts. The young patriarch has always been very serious in front of everyone. It's not a good sign to be so polite to everyone this time. Sure enough, what Qin Daoxian said next verified everyone's guess. I think the current monk training system of the family is no longer suitable for the development of the family, to the point where it has to be reformed. Qin Daoxian said in shock. Chapter 110. Heard Qin Daoxian's words. Everyone held their breath. The monk training system is closely related to every monk present. Qin Daoxian paused and continued. For the past 2 years or so, the family has been cultivating the cultivators of the Taoist generation in a fixed way. What is fixed culture? Lingdan is enough, Lingmi is not lacking, and water Lingzhu and Lingqi are in sufficient supply. As a result, I found that the monks of the Taoist generation were inevitably slack in their practice and learning of the various arts of cultivating immortals. After finished speaking, Qin Daoxian glanced at everyone. More than a year ago, I taught Daochu their first-order low-grade flying sword and red shadow flying sword refining technique, but more than a year has passed. Qin Daochu, tell me you now know a few first-order low-grade magic weapons. Refining? Me? Qin Daochu was suddenly called by name, stood up and faltered, speechless. After a long while, he said shyly, Young Patriarch, I have only mastered the refining of 3-door first-order low-grade flying swords. Hearing this, a hint of surprise flashed in Qin Daoxuan's eyes. But he still coughed. It only took me a year to master the refining of 3 first-order low-grade instruments. Do you know how long it took me to master all the first-order low-grade instruments in my family? It takes less than 2 years, just like you learn to refine weapons. Qin Daoxian had deep inside. And the environment for you to learn the refining tools is still so good. Tell me, are you worthy of the family's cultivation? Qin Daoxuan's voice suddenly increased. Don't you think that repeating the refining of the red shadow flying sword like a tool every day is the whole of your future life? Hearing this reprimand, everyone bowed their heads. Even those cultivators who were too young and had not yet learned to refine tools hung their heads and dared not speak. In view of your slack attitude, I decided to adopt a competitive training system within the family in the future. I want those monks who are motivated and willing to work hard to have more cultivation resources, and let those monks who are unwilling to work hard, lazy and slack, only enjoy the most basic cultivation resources. Tell me, what kind of monk do you want to be? Hearing the words, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Then they said in unison, Patriarch, I will not be lazy. Okay. Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. It seems that everyone supports me in reforming the family monk training system. Regardless of what everyone thinks, Qin Daoxian said to himself, in this case I will announce the specific policy of the family monk training system in the future. From today, the monk training system of the family will be divided into 3 levels. Basic level, elite level, core level. Each level system has huge differences in the cultivation resources it enjoys. Moreover, even if you enjoy core-level training resources, don't be complacent, because the family has corresponding assessments waiting for you every year. Once you fail to complete the corresponding assessment, you will be downgraded by resources. Those monks who are temporarily at the basic level do not need to be discouraged. As long as you work hard, you can also pass the assessment and enjoy more advanced resource training. All in all, in the future your training will no longer be a fixed resource, but will enjoy different resource supplies according to the level of effort each of you has put in. Hearing this, the Taoist monks present finally breathed a sigh of relief. This system sounds very fair. The capable go up, the weak go down. No one thinks they are weak, especially the Taoist cultivators present are still so young and at the age of being competitive. Actually, this training system has, to some extent, excluded monks with poor qualifications from the core layer. Because the cultivation of monks is a matter of aptitude. For the same resources, others with good spiritual roots will make faster progress than those with poor spiritual roots. Even if the cultivation time of the upper spiritual root cultivator is less than half of the lower spiritual root cultivator, the speed of progress is faster than that of the lower spiritual root cultivator. But the world is so unfair. If you want absolute fairness, you can only find it in your dreams. Of course. Qin Daoxian also gave monks with poor spiritual roots a chance, that is, to make achievements in cultivating immortals. For example, a cultivator with lower spiritual roots, although his cultivation speed is slow, he is very talented in making talismans, so it also has a huge training value. The family does not hesitate to spend more resources to cultivate such talents. But a cultivator who has neither cultivation talent nor talent in alchemy, weapon refining, talisman making, formation, etc. can only stay at the bottom of the family and be a brick of the family honestly. took 10,000 steps back and said that having the protection of a family is better than being a loose cultivator. Qin Daoxian was satisfied when he saw that all the monks of the Taoist generation looked like they had been beaten with blood. I thought that some people would be dissatisfied with the introduction of this system. But unexpectedly, everyone is very confident in themselves and feels that they are not weaker than others. Good thing. Qin Daoxian grinned when he saw everyone's fighting spirit. Didn't laugh for a while, his face tensed, and he continued, "There is one more thing, that is the training period of the family cultivator." What? Now everyone panicked. If you talk about the way of competition training, everyone can still accept it. And if there is a time limit for family training once the training period is over, where will the Qin family cultivator go? Although he was anxious, everyone knew that the young patriarch would never abandon his clan. Seeing the calm attitude of everyone, Qin Daoxian nodded. From now on, I, the cultivator of the Qin family, will be obliged to cultivate time for 9 years since I joined the clan. During this time, the monks will enjoy the free training of the family, and the training level will be carried out according to the 3 levels I just described. After 9 years, you graduated from ethnology. At that time, there will be 2 options: first, to get employment in the positions arranged by the clan, and second, to continue to study. Qin Daoxian paused. If you choose employment, you will naturally have a salary to receive, and these will be your main sources of cultivation resources in the future. As for further education, the family will bear the resources for your further education, but since this is no longer obligatory training, the family can dissuade you at any time based on your performance. Hear this. Everyone finally understood that this training system was not so much formulated for them as it was for the people of the Fuzi generation who were about to enter the clan. Anyway, their Taoist cultivators have never entered any clanology from beginning to end. In the beginning, it was Qin Daoxian who taught them hand in hand in his cave. And then, the family spirit vein was established, and they moved to the spirit vein with a better environment. As for the school that is about to be completed in the spiritual vein, they have not enjoyed a day. As you may have guessed, this training system is more for the monks of the Fuzi generation. After all, your environment was much more difficult back then, and your family was not able to set up an ethnic school. Speaking of this, Qin Daoxian's voice was a little low. Everyone also thought of the difficult days of the family more than a year ago, and they fell silent. At this time, Qin Daoqiu stood up and cupped his hands. "Young patriarch, we all know that these policies you formulated are all based on the interests of the family. We are also part of the family and are willing to make our own contributions to the family. Speaking of not enjoying the obligatory cultivation of the family, have you enjoyed it, young patriarch?" Finally heard a pleasant sentence in Qin Daoqiu's mouth. Qin Daoxian said with relief, "It may be a little late for you to enter the clan, but the resources that the family has cultivated for 9 years will still be supplied to you with a lot of money. Not only that, if you work in Feijin factory and Feijin shop, you will also receive family salary. Of course, family salary is distributed in the form of family contribution points. For details, you can take a look at the detailed family contribution system after the meeting." Swallowed and spit, Qin Daoxian continued, "After talking about the family training system, let's talk about the family's organizational structure. The organizational structure means the division of family power. The cultivators of the Taoist generation who are still young are still ignorant, but Qin Daoqiu, a teenage half-eldest, already knows what this means and has raised his spirits. Chapter 111. In Wuxia, the major immortal clans usually adopt the elders system to manage the clan. That is to say, the first elder, the second elder, the third elder, etc. are set up to manage all the affairs of the family. To be frank, from Qin Daoxian's point of view, this management system is outrageously inefficient. Because there is a huge problem with the Presbyterian system, the division of responsibilities is unclear. The elders of the Presbyterian Church seem to be the most powerful people other than the patriarch, but what is the specific responsibility of each elder in the family? Not sure. For small matters, the elders can step in and take care of them. For big matters, the elders sit down with the patriarch and discuss together, and finally the patriarch makes the final decision. Thus, if something goes wrong, even a specific person in charge cannot be found. Even if the clan divides the powers of the elders, but the clan is big, and the people below do not know which elder is in charge of which aspect, and it is easy for the decree to not be effectively implemented. Therefore, Qin Daoxian firmly wants to ban the Presbyterian system. In other words, he wants to make drastic changes on the basis of the Presbyterian Church. Clan meeting. Just when everyone thought that Qin Daoxian would propose a family elder system, Qin Daoxian unexpectedly proposed a new system. Department management system? Hearing this new term, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Taoist monks are better. After all, they are young and receptive. Whether it is a family elder or a department head, to them they are basically new words. But Qin Xianhe on the side frowned. The family elder system is the management system adopted by most of Wan Xinghai's families. He had never heard of this departmental management system proposed by Qin Daoxian. However, Qin Daoxian came up with a lot of new things, such as naming the workshop as a factory, changing the name of the clan to Changping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School, and so on. Seeing everyone's doubts, Qin Daoxian explained, "Yes, it is the department management system. Although there are many immortal seedlings in our Chen family, the oldest of the Fu family is only 3 years old, and the youngest is just born, even if these children have entered immortals. In a short period of time, the cultivation base of our family cultivator will also be at a relatively low level, so we shouldn't promote a chi-refining cultivator to be the family elder, right? Wouldn't that make others laugh out loud?" Qin Daoxian casually found a reason to talk nonsense. In fact, in Guang'an Mansion, there are many chi-refining families who set up chi-refining 9th-level cultivators as elders. Hear this. Qin Xianhe breathed a sigh of relief. He originally thought that Qin Daoxian was going to play again, but he didn't expect that this ministerial management system was just a substitute for the family elder system. Thinking of this, Qin Xianhe felt relieved. Seeing the relieved expression of Uncle 13, Qin Daoxian heaved a sigh of relief. He was not afraid that the Taoist cultivator would oppose him, and in fact no Taoist cultivator dared to oppose his decision. Qin Daoxian's only concern was that Uncle 13 did not support his decision. If Qin Xianhe objected, and he himself was the patriarch of the family, Qin Daoxian would not be able to carry out the department management system. Since it is a departmental management system, in the future, various things in the family will be divided into specific departments for management. Qin Daoxian paused. Now our Qin family has the following items in total. The first is the management of ordinary mortals in the family. This part of the work was originally in charge of Changping County Magistrate Qin Ji, but in the future I will hand over this work to the cultivators of the family. I call it the People's Livelihood Department, and the manager is the Minister of People's Livelihood. In addition to the management of the family mortals, the more important part is naturally the management of the family monks. When it comes to the management of the family monks, everyone raised their spirits. Everyone is a monk. They may not be interested in managing ordinary people, but they obviously have a lot of interest in managing family monks. See, Qin Daoxian said with a smile. For any cultivation force, education is the top priority, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the foundation of a cultivation force. Therefore, the second department of the family, I call it the Ministry of Education, is managed by the Minister of Education, responsible for coordinating the education of the family's immortal seedlings. The third department is the Ministry of Commerce, which manages the transactions between monks within the family's sphere of influence. The fourth department is the Ministry of Foreign Trade, which manages transactions between families and external forces. The fifth department is the Ministry of Industry, which is responsible for coordinating the production of family instruments, medicinal herbs, and magic talismans. The sixth department is the Ministry of Agriculture, which is responsible for coordinating the development of family spiritual fields and the cultivation of spiritual medicines. The seventh department is the Lingmai Management Department, referred to as the Lingguan Department, which is responsible for the management of the family spirit vessels, including the cultivation, promotion, and maintenance of the spirit vessels. The eighth department is the Legal Department, which is responsible for judging cultivators who violate the clan law within the sphere of influence of the clan. The ninth department is the Police Department, which is responsible for arresting monks who violate the law within the family's sphere of influence. The 10th department is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is responsible for the communication between the family and external forces. Qin Daoxian said 10 departments in one breath. Among them, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Police, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are all empty shells for the time being. Other departments, except the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Foreign Trade, and the Ministry of People's Livelihood, are in full swing for the time being. The Commerce Department, which is responsible for interfamily transactions, is basically useless. What good deals do the 11 chi-refining cultivators have? However, from Qin Daoxuan's simple description, everyone can see that this organizational structure is quite rigorous. Almost all aspects of the family temporarily involved are covered, and the responsibilities are clearly divided. Not at all worried about future bullshit. Qin Xinhe on the side seemed to have discovered the problem and asked, Dao Xin, do the so-called legal affairs department and police department you set up have conflicting powers? As far as I know, all major families have adopted law enforcement teams to arrest and try illegal monks. Uncle 13, you are right, these two departments do restrict each other's powers, but this is what I did on purpose. He paused. As you all know, the law enforcement team is the most important department to maintain the internal stability of the family. But at the same time, its power is too great. It combines the power of arrest and trial. If the leader of the law enforcement team or its internal members bend the law for personal gain, how much harm will it bring to the family? Hear this. Qin Xinhe was silent. Although he is not as open-minded as Qin Daoxian, who is a transmigrant, he is not stupid. How could he not know the situation Qin Daoxian mentioned? Just like the law enforcement team of the Zhou family, it is a department that even the cultivators of the Zhou family are afraid of. If you say you are arrested, you will be arrested and you will be sentenced how you want to be sentenced. Basically, outsiders have no right to interfere at all except for a few top bigwigs in the Zhou family. This is also the reason why Qin Daoxian shivered with fright when he met a loose cultivator named Zhang San when he first went to the scattered cultivator city. In this way, over time, the family cultivator will definitely feel resentment towards this law enforcement team, which will affect the internal stability of the family. This is what Qin Daoxian does not want to see. Chapter 112. Looking at the dazed expressions on the faces of the monks present, Qin Daoxian said with a smile, Of course, some of the departments I divided don't even have specific things, and there are still some things in the family's future, and there are no new departments. Such as the family's monk army, the financial department, the taxation department, and so on. Most of the departments I have divided will have to wait until the monks of the Fuzi generation have grown up before manpower can be formed. He paused, then continued, But there is one department that needs to be established imminently, and that is the Ministry of Education. Speaking of which, Qin Daoxuan's expression became serious. Everyone also recovered their spirits. Just now, Qin Daoxian was bombarding wildly and everyone was a little overwhelmed. Now when it comes to the Ministry of Education alone, everyone finally relaxes. The Ministry of Education, according to what the young patriarch said, is clanology. It seems that everyone's meaning can be seen from everyone's expressions. Qin Daoxian pursed his lips and said with a smile, Don't think that the education department refers to the school that is being built in the spiritual vein of my Qin family, then it is a big mistake. Precisely. In the future, all the schools in my Qin family will be managed by the Ministry of Education, but the Ministry of Education does not only refer to the Chongping No. 1 Xiuxin Primary School. In fact, you can also see from the name of the clan Chongping No. 1 Xiuxin Primary School, since there is a first, then there will be a second, a third, and a fourth in the future. Since there are primary schools, there will also be middle schools and universities in the future. Seeing that everyone was confused again, Qin Daoxian coughed and said, Of course, the only institution directly under the jurisdiction of the education department is Chongping No. 1 Xiuxin Primary School. Hear this. Qin Xinhe laughed, only when Qin Daoxian was bragging about drawing a big cake again. The cultivators of the Taoist generation looked like they were beaten with blood, and they were all attracted by the grand scene of the family depicted by Qin Daoxian. Military heart is available. Seeing everyone's state, Qin Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. The first dilemma facing our ethnology is the shortage of teachers. Now I, the cultivator of the Qin family, and Qin Daochuan, who is still in Guang'an, have only 11 people. This person must not only satisfy the production work of Feijin factory, but also take into account the educational work of clanology. Therefore, in the next few years, you may be very busy and you need to be mentally prepared. Heard. Everyone stood up one after another and said loudly, I am willing to go through fire and water for the family. Seeing everyone's attitude, Qin Daoxian was overjoyed and stretched out his hand. Sit down, all sit down. Seeing this scene, he even felt a little guilty for cutting down the resources of those Taoist monks with poor qualifications. But soon this guilt was ruthlessly abandoned by him. Because Qin Daoxian is clear as the patriarch of a family. The most taboo is the benevolence of women. Qin Daoxian can break the rules for the monks of the Taoist generation today, Will he open the back door for the monks of the blessing generation in the future? Will it be given to the cultivators of the Zizi generation in the future? As a result, the family is in danger. Even more terrifying. As the leader of the clan, Qin Daoxian is a role model for the clan in his words and deeds. If he takes the lead in bending the law for personal gain, the clansmen will surely follow suit. The so-called upper beam is not right and the lower beam is crooked, and this is what he is saying. By then, the family collapse would be instantaneous. Even if Qin Daoxian's strength is tyrannical, he can suppress all opposition and reorganize the family. The Qin family will inevitably suffer a great loss of vitality, and even collapse. Wait until everyone is seated. Qin Daoxian's voice became serious again. Next, I will talk about the teacher of ethnic studies. He paused. I plan to divide clanology into a professional division according to the various inheritances that the family has. It is temporarily divided into refining class, alchemy class, talisman-making class and kendo class. The first year of primary school is mainly a hodgepodge of learning, and all professional basic schools teach a little. In the second year, they will be divided into classes according to the professional achievements of the monks of the Fuzi generation. But now there is a problem. Our weapon refining class and kendo class can temporarily be taught by me, but there is no teacher in the alchemy class and the talisman class. Speaking of which, Qin Daoxian glanced at everyone. Seeing this scene, the other Taoist monks also retreated a little. When it comes to refining tools, they are somewhat confident. After all, they have been refining flying swords day and night for more than a year. After refining so many flying swords, even a person with poor talent will thoroughly understand the basic pattern of the first-order magic weapon. At least the rookie who doesn't know anything about the professor has no problem at all. But making talismans and alchemy, it is difficult for them. Although they knew that since Qin Daoxian said so, it proved that there must be a related inheritance in the family. But whether it is alchemy or talisman making, which one is easy to learn? In particular, alchemy, which is known as the three major difficulties in the world of immortality, along with the refining of weapons and formations. Seeing the crowd back down, Qin Daoxian frowned slightly, and when he was about to call his name in person, Qin Daochu and Qin Daolian stood up at the same time. Why are you standing up? When Qin Daochu saw Qin Daolian stand up, he was surprised. Can you stand up? Can't I stand up? Qin Daolian glared at Qin Daochu without showing weakness, then turned her head and said, Young patriarch, I want to learn alchemy. Oh. A smile appeared on Qin Daoxuan's face. How come you are thinking about learning alchemy? Young patriarch, after this year of refining flying swords, I found that I have no interest in refining weapons, and the progress of learning refining tools is almost the slowest among the many Taoist monks. Speaking of this, Qin Daolian's voice was a little low. So, if I want to learn alchemy, it's not like my alchemy talent is as bad as the alchemy talent, right? Hearing this sentence, Qin Daoxian was speechless for a while. This is the disadvantage of rushing ducks to the shelves without testing the talents of the Taoist monks. However, in order to increase the output of the Hongyin Feijin factory, there was no way to do it. Who made Qin Daochu and Qin Daolian the oldest group of Taoist monks? It's not that Qin Daoxian was mad at that time and caught a 5-year-old child and stuffed it into the factory. You sit down first and learn about alchemy, and we will discuss it in detail after our clan meeting. Qin Daolian nodded obediently and sat down. Done. Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Daochu again, frowned and said, Why are you standing up again? Qin Daochu felt a little nervous inexplicably, but he still dared to say, I feel that I am becoming more and more comfortable in refining weapons. I hope to become a refining teacher in the clan school. Didn't I say it? I'll go to the trainer. With your level of a 3-legged cat, what can you teach? Qin Daoxian said angrily. But. Qin Daochu held back for a long time and said, But you are so busy, young patriarch, and there are too many things in the family waiting for you to deal with. If you teach the kendo class and the refining class, I'm afraid you will be too busy. I want to help you. Speaking of the end, Qin Daochu's voice was barely audible. Hearing this, Qin Daoxuan's inner softness seemed to be touched. After a long time, Qin Daoxian nodded and said, Okay, then add you and I will teach the talisman class. So far, the first batch of teachers for Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School has been determined. Chapter 113. The clan will end. All the cultivators of the Taoist generation left Qin Daoxuan's courtyard with mixed feelings, except for Qin Daolian, who was quietly waiting by the side. You go outside and wait for me for a while, and I have a few words with the old patriarch. Qin Daoxian ordered. Okay. Qin Dalian nodded. Watching Qin Dalian leave the courtyard gate, Qin Xinhe turned his head to look at Qin Daoxian and said, "What you said just now, is it true or false that you will form an army of family monks in the future?" The monks of the Taoist generation may not have understood the deep meaning of the words that Qin Daoxian passed by. But Qin Xinhe understood. The monks are a group of people with extraordinary power. Why separate the military from it? Since there is an army of family monks, it means that another part of the monks is a non-combat sequence. Qin Xinhe is a little confused about what Qin Daoxian is going to do now. But it always felt like he was going to make a big show. Because of the mention of the monk army, Qin Xinhe couldn't help but think of the monk army in Zhenangwen more than 50 years ago. Only, Qin Xinhe felt that the monk army mentioned by Qin Daoxian was not necessarily the same as the monk army at Zhenangwen. Indulge for a moment. Qin Daoxian opened his mouth and said, "Uncle 13, are you worried that in the future I will bring my family's cultivator army to the battlefield of Izumo? As long as you know." Speaking, Qin Xinhe sighed. Back then, all the monks of the immortal family were blinded by the huge benefits of the Izumo country's battlefield, so much so that they put all the monks in the family into it. It is precisely because of this that my entire Qin family was almost destroyed. Speaking of the 12 monks of the Shenzi generation who died in Zhenangwen, even after more than 50 years, Qin Xinhe still couldn't let go. "Daoxian, I know that with the current development speed of the Qin family, you will definitely set foot on the battlefield of Izumo in the future, but you have to promise me that no matter what, you can't put all the power of the family into it." "Reserve," Qin Xinhe said, staring at him intently. "Okay, I promise you." Qin Daoxian nodded. Hearing this, Qin Xinhe finally breathed a sigh of relief. Instead, Qin Daoxian became puzzled. "Uncle 13, how do you know that my Qin family will definitely be on the Izumo battlefield in the future?" "Hear this." Qin Xinhe laughed. "The matter of going to the Izumo country battlefield, the small family may still temporarily escape, but the big family is difficult to avoid." "You mean?" "Qinyuan Jinzong forced the big family to go to the battlefield?" Qin Daoxian said in surprise. "It's not true." Qin Xinhe shook his head. On the one hand, there are many big families in the battlefield of Izumo that cannot give up their interests, which can quickly help cultivators grow up. On the other hand, after more than 400 years of war, what do you think about our relationship with Izumo and the Shenqing Dao alliance behind it? Never die. After thinking for a long time, Qin Daoxian used this word to describe it. "That's right, it's immortal." Qin Xinhe said with emotion. "Since this is the case, why are the big families on the battlefield of Izumo? Can't you see through it? Under the cover of the nest there is no complete egg." Unconsciously, the fate of Wan Xinghai Lu's cultivator and the major immortal clans has long been tied to Qinyuan sword sect. If Wan Xinghai lost the war with Izumo, the Shenqing Dao League would counterattack Wan Xinghai. What kind of tragic scene will it be? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help shivering. No wonder. No wonder Wan Xinghai's major families are increasingly supporting this war. Not only interests, because the major families have also understood that they and Izumo have long been in an endless relationship. Both sides must have one side completely down. Do you expect Izumo Kingdom to be kind to the major immortal families in Wan Xinghai after defeating Qinyuan sword sect? Thinking about the slaves of Izumo who were arrested by the major immortal clans, no one felt that the other party could let them go. Anyone who holds such a fluke mentality is either stupid or bad. Chat for a while. Qin Daoxian watched Qin Xinhe drive away and then said, "Come in." Moment. Qin Dalian Shiren walked in. He looked at the slim girl standing in front of him. Qin Daoxian could still see a trace of the timid appearance in her eyebrows when she was selected from among the many Qin children. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's mouth couldn't help but evoke a smile. "Dalian, have you figured it out?" "Young patriarch, I've thought about it." Qin Daolian's eyes were firm. Qin Daoxian nodded. "Learning alchemy is not an easy task, so let's do it. You will all follow me to learn alchemy for the next 2 years, and the work in the Feijin factory will stop temporarily." Hearing this, Qin Daolian's pretty face was full of anxiety and said, "Young patriarch, how can this be done? Qin Daochu left the factory and wanted to continue learning the refining with you. I also left the factory, so there are only 3 people left in the factory? What happened to the 3? Just let them work longer hours. As I said, in the next few years, everyone in the Daozi generation will have a hard time. Do you think I am joking?" Dalian dare not. Qin Dalian lowered her head. Qin Daoxian sighed and said, Don't worry, they won't work hard for 2 years, and the youngest Taoist monk is over 6 years old. During this time they will follow Dao Chu and learn to refine with me. When the clan school starts 2 years later, the monks of the Taoist generation will be able to enter the Feijin factory to work. At that time, the factory's Feijin production will inevitably increase by a large amount. Qin Daoxian didn't forget that in addition to the 5 cultivators working in the factory, there were 4 younger monks. 2 years later, this group of young Taoist monks can also be of great use. As for them entering the factory when they were just over 8 years old, they did not meet the labor standards in Qin Daoxian's cognition, so someone had to take care of them. Anyway, his 8-year-old Qin family entered the factory. After all, which generation of cultivators in the Qin family is not sacrificing for the growth of the family? Qin Xinhao is like this, Qin Daoxian is like this, and even the future monks of the blessing generation are like this. It is through the continuous sacrifice of generations of Qin family cultivators that the Qin family can grow and take off step by step. In the end, Qin Daolian was still reluctant to learn alchemy completely off the job. She proposed to Qin Daoxian that she would go to the Feijin factory to work for 3 hours a day, and spend the rest of the time practicing and learning alchemy. Seeing her firm attitude, Qin Daoxian agreed. This moment, he finally knew that the Qin family belonged not only to him, but also to every cultivator of the Qin family. Everyone is working hard for the development and growth of the Qin family. All the clansmen are like this, and the He-Chou family is not happy. Think of this. Qin Daoxian couldn't help laughing. He felt more and more that it was a happy and interesting thing to be a patriarch in such a family. Chapter 114. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, half a year has passed. In the courtyard of Lingfu, feeling the sea of Dantian energy in his body that had grown to the limit, Qin Daoxian slowly opened his eyes, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. The 9th level of qi refining has finally broken through. From the age of 16 to the age of 19, it took more than 3 years. Qin Daoxian's cultivation level soared from the 3rd level of qi refining to the 9th level of qi refining, and he was promoted at a rate of almost 2 levels a year. This cultivation speed is no less than that of some Tianlingen cultivators with slightly less resources. This half year, in addition to teaching Qin Daochu and a group of Taoist monks to refine weapons all day, Qin Daoxian is also teaching Qin Daolian to learn alchemy. Thanks to the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store understanding. The second-order alchemy inheritance that was obtained from the female cultivator of the Izumo country has already been mastered by Qin Daoxian. Not only that, in the past 6 months he has also cultivated a first-order spell to the perfect state. The name of this first-order spell is Wind Blade Art. That is, the spell carried by the leopard-shaped puppet beast that Qin Daoxian found in the Imo family library. As the most basic first-order wind attribute spell, Wind Blade is not powerful among all first-order spells. The only advantage is that it is fast, the release speed is fast, and the Wind Blade ballistic speed after release is fast. As for power, Qin Daoxian tested it. The Wind Blade technique of the Perfection Realm can't even break through the Ice technique in his Spirit Talisman. Not to mention compared to Qin Daoxian's ultimate trick, the sort of chasing the wind and covering the rain. Of course, Qin Daoxian chose to practice this first-order spell, not for its power. Instead, use it to comprehend the pattern of the wind, which can also be called the law of the wind. In the immortal world, the monks divided spells into 9 types according to their attributes: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, and darkness. In addition to the basic 5-element spells, spells with the 4 attributes of wind, thunder, light, and darkness are relatively rare. As for spells like ice, it's actually a variant of water spells. If you count the various attribute spells derived from the 5 elements, there are too many types of spells. But no matter what kind of spell it is, if you want to release it, you must comprehend the pattern of the avenues of this spell. That is, the magic Dao pattern that monks often say. Due to professional needs, the talisman must be proficient in various spells and patterns. Therefore, every talisman maker has a high level of attainment in magic. According to what Zhou Mubai said in Kendo Jade Slips. If a cultivator wants to comprehend the meaning of the sword, he must fuse the Tao with the sword. The Dao here refers to the spell Dao pattern. Qin Daoxian had rarely practiced spells before, so he couldn't say how proficient he was with spells. In fact, he knows a little bit about the pattern of the wind. Because Yu Fengshu can be classified into the category of wind attribute spells, it contains a part of the wind pattern. This is also the reason why Qin Daoxian chose to practice Wind Blade Art first. He is somewhat of a foundation in this regard. It turns out that his choice was not wrong. After more than a month of epiphany, Qin Daoxian finally cultivated the wind blade technique to a perfect state. Although the power of the spell is unsatisfactory, at least his understanding of the wind pattern is much deeper than before. Especially after the last epiphany. He actually found that he had been stuck in the Kendo realm where he had not moved for more than a year, and he had improved again. Qin Daoxian found that with the help of epiphany, the wind pattern was actually slowly integrated into his Kendo, which made his Kendo level steadily improve. This discovery made Qin Daoxian excited. His progress in Kendo before was really fast. So much so that Qin Daoxian had some self-doubt about his Kendo talent after more than a year of lack of progress. Is it because his Kendo talent is so poor that the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store understanding cannot help him continue to improve in Kendo? But the last epiphany completely dispelled his doubts. It's not that his Kendo talent is poor, but that he didn't find the right direction. This little trick, if it wasn't for Zhou Mubai's advice from Jiandao Jade Slip, Qin Daoxian didn't know how much time it would take to discover this secret. Every time he thought about it, he felt more and more grateful to Zhou Mubai. To a certain extent, Zhou Mubai had a half-teacher friendship with him. The problem of comprehending sword intent is solved, and Qin Daoxian's cultivation has reached the 9th level of qi refining. Then the next thing placed in front of Qin Daoxian is the foundation. Of course. Before establishing the foundation, Qin Daoxian had to complete 3 things. Because he wants to take the legendary road of sword repair. So his preparations can't be overstated. The first, naturally, is to comprehend the sword intent. This point, Qin Daoxian feels that there is no problem. Now that he has found the right direction, the rest is to use the ability of Hongmeng Enlightenment Daojing to store understanding all the time. The second is to polish the infuriating energy so that the infuriating energy is pure and mellow, reaching the point where there is no progress. This is what every qi refining cultivator needs to do. In fact, not only cultivators in the qi refining stage but in all cultivation realms, there is a special realm called the perfection realm. For example, qi refining is complete, foundation building is complete, zifu is complete, and so on. But in fact, consummation is not a new realm, it refers to the cultivator reaching a special state that can break through to the next realm. Essentially, the perfection of qi refining is the 9th level of qi refining. It's just that the 9th level qi refining cultivator's infuriating energy is pure, and there is no way to enter it, and he is ready to build a foundation. The head of the Mo family, who was beheaded by Qin Daoxian, was in this special state. I want to reach this special state from the 9th level of qi refining. Relying on the power of medicinal pills is no longer effective. This was the case with Wei Sihai, the 9th level qi refining cultivator hired by the Qin family magical item branch. Whether it is the medicinal pills or water spirit beads that assist cultivation, they have no effect on this type of cultivator. Because it is not the spiritual energy that is used to polish the infuriating energy, but the cultivator's water grinding effort bit by bit. According to the different conditions of the monks, it may take a few years at least and even 10 years at most. Come this far. Only Qin Daoxian knew how powerful Zhou Mubai's foundation building was at the age of 21. Because polishing infuriating can't rely on foreign objects. Only by the monk himself. In other words, Zhou Mubai might have reached the 9th level of qi refining when he was less than 15 years old. As for the third thing, it is also the most important thing or the one thing that Qin Daoxian is least sure of. Build a natal Dantian decompressor or infuriating storage. This half year, Qin Daoxian put a lot of thought into this. I read a lot of ancient books and I experimented with many kinds of spiritual or materials, but I still couldn't find a material to store infuriating energy. This made Qin Daoxian extremely frustrated. After all, finding this material is only the first step. Only by finding this kind of material can he later develop a special natal magic weapon to store infuriating energy based on this kind of material. However, he is now unable to complete even the first step. Chapter 115. Young Patriarch. Outside Lingfu, a group of figures flew towards Qin Daoxian's courtyard. Take a closer look. It was Qin Daochu, Qin Dalian and the young monks of the Taoist generation. Everyone lowered their bodies and respectfully saluted Qin Daoxian. See. Qin Daoxian nodded. Let's start. After finishing speaking, he looked at Qin Dalian and said, go to the alchemy room first, and refine the first order low-grade spirit pill that I taught you yesterday. Yes, young patriarch. Qin Dalian bowed her hands. Then he walked towards the alchemy room in Lingfu. Watching Qin Daolian leave, Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Daochu and the others and said, "Have you learned the technique of superimposing array patterns that I told you yesterday?" Soon. Time is passing little by little in the hard work of everyone. Unconsciously. 3 hours passed. By the time Qin Daochu and the others waved goodbye to Qin Daoxian, it was getting late. Call? Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Standing up, he stretched his muscles. The blue scales in the storage bag warmed slightly. Qin Daoxian took the blue scales out of the storage bag. It was a message from Luo Li. Qin Daoxuan's expression was a little puzzled. It stands to reason that today is not the day when the Mer people trade with his Qin family. Think about it. Qin Daoxian sank his consciousness into the blue scales. After half a cup of tea. With a strange expression, Qin Daoxian withdrew his consciousness from the blue scales. Invite me to be a guest at Magic Monkey Mountain? Qin Daoxian had a sullen face thinking about the meaning of the merman's move. But after thinking about it for a long time I found nothing. Forget it, why do you think so much? Ask her face to face and it's over. Qin Daoxian shook his head with a smile. After 2 years of trading, his relationship with Luo Li was no longer just an ordinary trading partner. The relationship between the two was much more harmonious than when they first met. Every time we meet, the two sides have been able to sit down and chat and laugh just like a close friend. Sequoia Island. Wanghai Pavilion. In the distance, a lonely and slender figure sat on the stone bench of Wanghai Pavilion, which made people feel unbearable and feel pity. Luo Li stared at the endless sea, and slapped the sea with her tail in disinterest. While slapping, the small mouth still counts the numbers rhythmically. 3020, 3021. Ah? Where did I count? Luo Li raised his head blankly, then lowered his head and muttered, "Forget it, count again." Sudden. Luo Li raised his head and saw a white figure flying from the sky in the distance. It was Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian lowered his body, smiled and cupped his hands. "I'm sorry Miss Luo has been waiting for a long time." "No, I just arrived." Luo Li's pretty face was slightly cramped. After pondering for a moment, Qin Daoxian asked straight to the point, "Miss Luo, you just said in the subpoena that you invited me to be a guest in the noble territory. I don't know why?" "No, nothing, it's just that my dad wants to see you." "Your father?" The expression on Qin Daoxuan's face suddenly became serious. Luo Li's father was a late-stage cultivator of the Z Mansion. Although he was not Zhou Mubai's opponent, he was a figure who could be ranked in the entire Guang'an Mansion. Be honest, Qin Daoxian didn't really want to see this guy. After all, with his Chi-refining cultivator's cultivation base, it was a bit too stressful to meet an alien Zifu cultivator. But to say that this trip will encounter unexpected events. Qin Daoxian really couldn't find any reason for the other party to attack the Qin family. After more than 2 years of trade exchanges, the Mer people are highly dependent on the Qin family in all aspects. It can be said that if something happens to the Qin family, the Mer people are the last thing they want to see. Even for the Qin family, the Mer people are willing to take risks to help. To know. If the aliens dare to intervene in the internal affairs of the human race, they will take the risk of genocide. At this point, it was only later that Qin Daoxian learned about it in his communication with Qin Xianhe. Qinyuan Jianzong's suppression of the Wangxinghai aliens is extremely terrifying. In order to suppress the Wangxinghai alien race, Qinyuan Jianzong specially established an existence called Jinhai Temple. Jinhai Temple may not have a good reputation among the human race monks in Wangxinghai, but in the underwater world of Wangxinghai, it is an organization that can make foreign races feel fearful. Especially the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. It is the most powerful one in the entire Wanxinghai, and it is also one of the pillars of the entire Wanxinghai. This also explains. Why did Luo Li's father have obvious fear on his face when he heard about Qinyuan Jianzong? In fact, what he was afraid of was not the Qinyuan sword sect, but the Jinhai Hall under the Qinyuan sword sect. Seeing the hesitant look on Qin Daoxuan's face, Luo Liqiao couldn't help showing a trace of nervousness. She was afraid that Qin Daoxian would refuse. Because she doesn't know who else to turn to for help now. Okay. Qin Daoxian nodded slowly and then he wondered again. It's just that, after all, I have only cultivated in the Qi period and I don't know the technique of water escape. How can I enter the deep sea world? Hear this. Luo Li smiled sweetly and said, "You forgot the innate magical power I used when I sent you home last time?" "You mean?" "Yes, the innate magical powers of our merman can allow you to go to the underwater world of Wangxinghai without using the water escape technique." Speaking of this, Luo Li smiled mysteriously. Trust me, you will absolutely love the deep sea world of 10,000 stars sea, to her. Qin Daoxian just wanted to say hee hee. What is the deep sea world like? Although Qin Daoxian has never been there in his previous life, he has always seen pictures taken by submarines. It was a cold, dark, dead world. Only special beings can survive in that environment. Luo Li said that he would fall in love with the deep sea world of Wanxinghai. Isn't this nonsense? But Qin Daoxian can also understand. After all, there are shisha in the eyes of lovers, and some people will say that their hometown is not good. Maybe in Luo Li's eyes, the underwater world of Wanxinghai is like a fairyland? It seemed that he could see the disapproval in Qin Daoxian's eyes. Luo Li covered her mouth and laughed lightly without explaining. Her small expression seemed to be waiting to see Qin Daoxian's joke. For some reason, every time she gets along with Qin Daoxian, she feels a moment of relief. Luo Li felt that perhaps Qin Daoxian was too helpful to their merman. So much so that she herself had a slight dependence on Qin Daoxian. Let's go now or... Qin Daoxian didn't finish his words. I only felt that my right hand was tight and then, it was spinning for a while and then it fell into the sea freely. Can you say hello first next time? Qin Daoxian said helplessly. Sorry, I'm too excited, I'll pay attention next time. Luo Li smiled and revealed a pair of small tiger teeth. Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian didn't blame the other party anymore. As the two of them went deeper and deeper into the sea, the light coming from overhead became less and less. To the end. Qin Daoxian completely entered a situation where he could not see his fingers. Fortunately, he still has divine consciousness available. The body is covered with a transparent film that fits the skin. It makes him feel neither suffocated nor any pressure from the sea, which is very miraculous. Losing his vision, Qin Daoxian's sense of touch seemed to become extraordinarily sharp. He could feel the slight warmth emanating from Luo Li's little hand holding him, and it was this slight warmth that gave him some peace of mind in this dark environment. Gradually, Qin Daoxian's breathing returned to steady. I do not know how long it has been. Luo Li's voice came from Qin Daoxian's ears again. We are about to enter the shady layer of Wanxinghai. Shadow layer? Qin Daoxian, who didn't know what to do, asked through voice transmission. Chapter 116. The Underwater World of Wanxinghai. It is divided into 3 layers in total, the superficial layer, the shady layer, and the Xinghai layer below the shady layer. After passing through these 3 sea areas, you will enter the real Wanxinghai underwater world. Then the superficial layer. The shady layer is called the real cold and darkness. It is exactly the same as the deep sea world in Qin Daoxian's previous life. The only difference from the seabed in the previous life is that the depth of Wanxinghai is really too deep. How fast Luo Li escaped at the foundation building stage. But after diving for a full hour he didn't even pass through the shady layer. This scene made Qin Daoxian feel a little hairy in his heart. Originally thought that after he became a monk, he was no longer afraid of the mighty power of nature. But at this moment in the shady layer of Wanxinghai, Qin Daoxian discovered his insignificance again. The so-called cultivator is nothing more than a stronger person. In front of this boundless power of heaven and earth, not to mention the cultivators in the Chirifining period, the foundation building period and the Purple Palace period, what is it? It seems to feel flustered. Qin Daoxian couldn't help holding Luo Li's little hand back. This action caused Luo Li's body to tremble slightly. But soon, the blushing Luo Li didn't say a word, and gently held Qin Daoxian's right hand. Along the way, the two of them were all silent, only an inexplicable affection was brewing between them. Sudden, a ray of light appeared in Qin Daoxian's sight. That is... Qin Daoxian looked at the little stars below, a little overwhelmed. That is the star sea layer of Wanxinghai, we have passed through the shady layer. Luo Li breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Obviously. Every time I cross the shady layer, even for Luo Li who lives in the underwater world of Wanxinghai all the year round, it is a lot of psychological pressure. Star sea layer. At this moment, Qin Daoxian felt that his worldview was smashed to pieces. The underwater world of Wanxinghai is actually such a magnificent sight. See Qin Daoxian's shocking and inexplicable look. Luo Li only felt amused for a while. She shook Qin Daoxian's big hand and said, Do you know why it's called Wanxinghai? Just because of it? Qin Daoxian pointed to the countless stars below like a vast starry sky and muttered, Yes, it's because of it. Lori nodded. All the time. Qin Daoxian thought that Wanxinghai was called Wanxinghai because the islands on the sea were as numerous as stars in the sky. Did not expect. The underwater world of Wanxinghai really contains a starry sky. What a nice view. Qin Daoxian couldn't help but said. It's beautiful, but it's also dangerous. Luo Li looked at the picture in front of her and responded. Danger? Qin Daoxian turned his head, somewhat unclear. Compared to your human world, the underwater world of Wanxinghai is extremely cruel. Sometimes, I envy your human world for having the power of Qianyuan sword sect. Envious? Qin Daoxian thought about it carefully, and then he understood the meaning of Luo Li's words. For any family cultivator who has the will to grow the family, Qianyuan Jianzong is a lingering cloud over their heads. But for loose cultivators and small family cultivators, as well as ordinary people living in Wanxinghai, Qianyuan Jianzong at least gave them the most basic survival guarantee. Take Guang'an Prefecture as an example. Even if the Qin family was so weak at the beginning, they were not worried that other families would come to their family property and destroy the Qin family's Manchu family, relying on the shock and deterrence of Qianyuan Jianzong. There is also the existence of Jinhai Hall. If it wasn't for Jinhai Hall's suppression of alien races in the Wanxinghai underwater world, all races on the bottom of the sea would not dare to make any changes. It is unknown how many mortal cultivators are killed or injured every year only by monster attacks. The monster attack here did not refer to the monster rebellion in Chongping County that year. The monster chaos in Chongping County was all about monsters like tiger eye fish that didn't reach the rank. This kind of monster that does not enter the rank is not so much a monster but a beast. For this kind of beast, Qianyuan Jianzong has no good way to manage it. Because there are too many of them in the Wanxinghai. And no matter how you kill them, they won't be afraid. Moreover, the reproduction rate of these monsters that are not in the rank is astonishing. Qianyuan Jianzong and the major families can only take regular cleaning methods to control the number of these non-grade monsters. Continue to dive with the two figures. Qin Daoxian finally got close to these stars. As they approached, Qin Daoxian found that these stars had no real substance, like clusters of starlight floating in the deep-sea world. Among these stars they are as bright as the rising sun. Small but like dust, visible in a few steps. After careful counting, Qin Daoxian found that there were a total of 7 stars as bright as the rising sun. It is these stars that illuminate the entire underwater world as bright as day. Into the sea of stars. Qin Daoxian seemed to have come to a dreamy land. And he found that as he got closer to the underwater world, the aura here seemed to become more and more intense. You said that the spiritual energy is strong? Luo Li said shyly, that's because we are not proficient in formations, and we cannot block the spiritual energy of the spiritual meridians with formations. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian didn't know how to respond. Did not expect. The cultivation environment that Wanxinghai loose cultivators dream of is actually not on land, but in the deep sea. It's a pity that the loose cultivators will never be able to enter the deep-sea world to practice. Loose cultivators with low cultivation bases simply cannot enter here. Even in the Foundation establishment period, because of the constant consumption of the water escape technique, it is impossible to practice here. I want to practice in the underwater world of Wanxinghai without too much influence. Human race cultivators at least have to reach the golden core cultivation base to be possible. And when it comes to Jindan cultivation base, not to mention that you can get more and better resources on the battlefield of Izumo. Only the high-level spiritual veins of the Wanxinghai underwater world are almost all controlled by powerful aliens. It made Jindan cultivators stay away. Because if you want to win these high-level spiritual veins, you must kill all the alien races that occupy the spiritual veins. So count. It's not as good as going to the battlefield of Izumo. At least not alone. Say it again. The underwater world of Wanxinghai is the basic plan of Qianyuan Jianzong. How can Jindan cultivator not even have this vision? More than an hour later, the two finally crossed the vast star sea layer. Really came to the underwater world of Wanxinghai. Luo Li stood on a high mountain under the sea. After identifying the direction, he took Qin Daoxian's hand and flew in the direction of Demon Ape Mountain. Along the way, Luo Li was adept at avoiding the spiritual veins occupied by the major alien races. It flew for several hours. The two finally came to the realm of the Magic Monkey Mountain. As a third-order spiritual vein, Magic Ape Mountain covers an extremely wide area, reaching a radius of thousands of miles. On the main vein of Magic Monkey Mountain, one by one cave houses were opened up by the people of the Merman tribe. On another mountain, a large number of male mermen are going in and out of the mine. Obviously they are mining for the Qin family. Overlooked. Luo Li stretched out his finger, pointed to the largest cave on the main vein and said, "That's my father's cave." Chapter 117. Calm down. The two flew towards the cave house of the Merman clan chief. Moment. The figures of the two fell in front of Luo Li's father's cave. Let's go. Luo Li turned around and smiled at Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian nodded and followed behind him. Dad, look who I invited. As soon as he entered the cave, Luo Li said cheerfully. Qin Daoxian looked around at the furnishings in the cave. Compared with the cave mansion of the human cultivator, the cave mansion of the merman seems to have a different style. Above the cave, dotted with large and small water spirit beads, it looks like the top of the starry sky. Qin Daoxian saw the merman clan chief for the second time in the hall of the cave mansion. Compared with the first time he saw him, the state of the merman clan chief does not seem to be very good at the moment. Luo Shiyuan raised his head, his face pale. Wrapped in a large layer of brocade clothes from the outside, it seems a little weak. You came. Luo Ziyuan's voice was horribly hoarse, as if there was only one breath left. But Qin Daoxian knew that even if the other party was seriously injured as a late-stage cultivator of the Purple Mansion, he could never guess. Senior, you are. Luo Shiyuan looked up at Luo Li, waved his hand and said, Liar, you go out first. Yes, Dad. There was a trace of reluctance in Luo Li's eyes. She was very worried about her father's injury, but there was no good way to do it. According to the illustrations provided by Qin Daoxian, she found a lot of elixir to treat her injuries at the bottom of the sea, but none of them had any effect on her father's injuries. Watching Luo Li leave, Luo Shiyuan looked at Qin Daoxian deeply and said, Boy, we meet again. Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and did not speak. Luo Shiyuan tore off his large robe and said to himself, As you can see, I want live long. I see. On Luo Ziyuan's chest, the wound Zhou Mubai caused him not only did not heal, but instead became more serious. A terrifying sword energy hovered over the opening in Luo Ziyuan's chest. Moreover, Qin Daoxian also saw that this sword energy, while fighting against Luo Ziyuan's mana, was devouring the opponent's mana and growing. This made Luo Shiyuan unable to erase this sword energy at all. More than 3 years of entanglement. Let Luo Shiyuan almost run out of fuel. 3 years ago, in order to attack the Magic Monkey Mountain, it completely lost control and it turned out to be what it is now. Luo Shiyuan laughed at himself and put on his robe again. Do you know why I want to see you? Junior doesn't know, please ask Senior to make it clear. Qin Daoxian arched his hands. As for Luo Ziyuan's injury, he who has accepted the inheritance of Zhou Mubai's swordsmanship is more aware than Luo Shiyuan himself. This is the damage left by sword intent. This kind of injury is extremely difficult to heal, unless you let Jian Xiu use his own sword intent to wipe out this sword energy, or let Jin Dan Cultivator use more advanced mana to wipe it out bit by bit. Otherwise, if the sword chi is not removed, even if the wound is cured by taking the elixir, the physical body will continue to be destroyed by the sword chi. This is also the horror of Jian Xiu. In the past 3 years, you and I have traded frequently. Whether it's our weapons, Lingmi or even the clothes on my clan, it all depends on your Qin family's supply. Luo Shiyuan paused. What's even more ridiculous is that my family actually used the contribution points of your Qin family. Boy, you plan to bring our family under your command and become a vassal of your Qin family. Heard? Qin Daoxian's heart was tight, but he had no fear on his face and said righteously, Senior, what is the meaning of this? The transactions between you and me are all for each other's interests. If the senior feels that it is inappropriate to use my Qin family's contribution point, you can exchange it for the spirit stone. Don't be in a hurry to argue, you and I know what the facts are. Luo Shiyuan sighed, let me ask you, do you really like our merman? Qin Daoxian didn't know what the other party meant and fell silent for a while. Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not speak, Luo Ziyuan's eyes became misty. You know, why didn't I deal with the Yang family or the Wu family at the beginning, but did I find a small family like your Qin family? The younger generation doesn't know. Qin Daoxian shook his head. He has always been very suspicious about this matter. On the surface, whether the mermen are looking for cooperation with the Yang family or the Wu family, they are better than looking for his Qin family. After all, the Yang, Wu and Zhao families are much stronger than the Qin family. Because these families have their own vassal races and I, the mere people, don't want to be someone else's vassal. Luo Xiu said far and quietly. Subordinate race? This was the first time he had heard of the secrets of the Guang'an House clan, and he couldn't help but feel very curious for a while. That's right. For example, the purple electric snapping turtles of the Yang family and the clear water monkeys of the Wu family are all their vassal races. The Zhou family also has a vassal race. It is said to be a Jindan race, but I don't know which race it is. Luo Shuyuan said, shaking his head. The vassal race, said to be a vassal, is actually a dog raised by the major families. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian raised an uproar in his heart. He knew that the Wanxinghai Xiuxian clan had a profound background, but he did not expect it to be so profound. In addition to the strength of his own people, he also has a tentacle of interest in the underwater world of Wanxinghai. Actually, think about it. No one in this world is a fool, especially these big families. What the Qin family can think of, how can other families not think of it? Besides, trading with foreign races can harvest a lot of wealth in the underwater world of Wanxinghai, and it is a strange thing that the major immortal clans do not get involved. As for the Qin family who didn't know about it before, that was because the Qin family had no access to this level at all. Think of this. Qin Daoxian said again, since your mere people have been arrested by the Zhou family, why don't you choose to become their vassals? In this way, it is at least better than the clansmen being slaves of the Zhou family. Who knows to hear this? Luo Shuyuan said quietly, slaves are still of the same clan but vassals are not. I don't know what seniors mean? Qin Daoxian frowned, very puzzled. Luo Shuyuan did not answer this question but instead asked, do you know the origin of my mere people? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian shook his head. Although it was rumored that the merman was a branch of the ancient human race, how could he say such unconfirmed rumors? At least on the surface, the racial characteristics of the human race and the merman race are obvious. One has legs and the other has fishtails. In ancient times, monsters were the overlords of this world, and humans were just the rations of monsters. At that time, there were huge differences between the human race in order to survive. One side advocates fighting the monster to the end, while the other side advocates fleeing to the deep sea to survive. Countless years have passed. The human race who chose to fight the monster to the end, defeated the monster and became the master of this world. The human race that chose to flee to the deep sea gradually lost its human characteristics and grew a fish tail. But they found that there are also countless monsters in the deep sea world, and as the human race on the land wins, more and more monster races flee to the deep sea so that this human race is difficult to reproduce, and the race is getting smaller and smaller. Speaking of which, Luo Shuyuan raised his head. That's right, this branch of the ancient human race is the ancestor of our mermaid race. Between you and me we are of the same race. Who knows that Qin Daoxian's expression did not change at all when he heard this, but instead glanced at the other side's fish tail. Seemingly stimulated by Qin Daoxian's eyes, Luo Shuyuan suddenly became excited. Yes. We escaped back then. But our ancestors just wanted to survive, they just wanted to preserve a trace of blood for the human race. Our ancestors just wanted to live, they just didn't want to die. What is wrong with us? Whoa whoa whoa. After speaking, Luo Shuyuan coughed violently. Sorry, I don't think I'm the same race as your merman. Qin Daoxian said coldly. This sentence. It seemed that the deepest scar in Luo Ziyuan's heart was torn apart, making him a dignified cultivator of the late period of the Purple Mansion, grief-stricken, covering his face and weeping. Different choices create different racial destinies. One of the two human races became the ruler of this world. On the other hand, even the most basic reproduction and survival have become extremely difficult. Prejudice. The side that now dominates the world no longer thinks that the merman is a branch of the human race that is of the same origin as theirs. Luo Shuyuan thought of when he went to attack Guang'an Mansion. Those loose cultivators looked at themselves. Just like seeing some kind of novel monster, his eyes are full of jokes. Near the moment of death, Luo Xiu couldn't help but feel sad. If it was back then, their ancestors did not choose to flee to the deep sea, but chose to fight side by side with the human race on land. How nice. A long time. Luo Shuyuan calmed down, raised his head and said, we, the mermaid race, are willing to be your vassal of the Chen family. Why? Qin Daoxian was very puzzled. Although the Qin family is thriving now with so many big families in Guang'an Prefecture, no matter which one they choose, it is better than choosing the Qin family. Luo Ziyuan's eyes dimmed, because of liar. Miss Luo? Qin Daoxian frowned, even more puzzled. Because she told me that only you look at her like you're looking at a monster. Luo Shuyuan increased his tone again. We are not monsters, let alone aliens, we are humans. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. On behalf of the Qin family, I accept the allegiance of your merman. It has always been Qin Daoxian's dream to get the allegiance of the merman. But somehow, he didn't feel excited at the moment. Yes, just a hint of sadness. Sometimes one wrong step can be irreversible. Luo Shuyuan straightened his body, then knelt down in front of Qin Daoxian and made a contract in his mouth. I, the head of the Merman clan Luo Shuyuan, hereby swear on behalf of all the members of the Merman clan from today onwards, allegiance to the Qin family until death to rest. I, Qin Daoxian, the patriarch of the Qin clan, accept the allegiance of the Mer people on my behalf of the Qin clan. In midair, an invisible contract was formed between the two. The covenant of racial affiliation. This moment, he felt that he had a faint sense of every member of the Merman clan. Although this sense of induction can't do anything to the people of the Merman clan, it can detect whether the other party is loyal to him. That's what the race affiliation pact does. Watching Qin Daoxian leave his cave, Luo Shuyuan sighed silently, "Liar, I hope Dad's choice this time is correct." Chapter 118. Magic Ape Mountains. Follow the induction of the attached contract. Qin Daoxian quickly found Luo Li's location. Far away, Luo Li was lying on a hill full of vegetation and seaweed, with Bai Nen's hands folded, resting on the back of his head, staring at the huge stars in the Qinghai layer, dazed. "What are you thinking about?" Silently, Qin Daoxian sat beside her. "When I was a child, I used to lie on a rock and watch the stars. At that time, I asked my mother why our people were always fleeing and fighting. My mother told me that it was for survival." A line of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. "I asked my mother, what is the meaning of life? She told me, just like she gave birth to me, I will give birth to a smaller me in the future, and this is the meaning of survival. Later, my mother was gone." Speaking of which, Luo Li was sobbing. Qin Daoxian looked at her, hesitated, and finally put his hand on her shoulder gently, comforting. "Everything will pass. The human race has survived so much difficulty in the ancient times. I believe that your merman will also usher in a bright day." Hearing this, Luo Li raised his head, staring at Qin Daoxian's eyes with a pair of slightly reddish eyes, and said, "Will he die?" "Can?" Qin Daoxian nodded, then looked at the starry sky. "Everyone dies." These words seemed to comfort Luo Li, and they seemed to comfort himself. "I cried for a long time." Luo Li was tired from crying and actually fell asleep in Qin Daoxian's arms. Looking at her pear blossom with rain, Qin Daoxian felt a hint of pity in his heart. The Qin family is struggling. But everyone knows that the life of the Qin family is the dream of the merman living in the deep-sea world. An hour later, Luo Li woke up faintly. Found himself lying in Qin Daoxian's arms. His pretty face could not help blushing slightly, but then he thought of something and his face became pale again. As the signer of the subordinate contract, Luo Li could feel the faint connection between her and Qin Daoxian. "Master. Master." She shouted the word awkwardly. Qin Daoxian shook his head. "You don't have to, just call me by my name." Who knows? Luo Li's face is very firm. Shook his head and said, "The rituals cannot be broken, and the rules cannot be broken. Since my merman is a subordinate race of the Qin family from today onwards, you will be my master. Before that though, I would like to have one last slap in the face." Said, she looked at Qin Daoxian with a hint of expectation. "Okay." Although he didn't know what Luo Li meant when he said presumptuous, he couldn't bear to reject this girl with a tragic fate. Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not reject her, Luo Li happily grabbed Qin Daoxian's right hand and flew in one direction. "You come with me." Seeing her flamboyant appearance, Qin Daoxian laughed dumbly. It's really a temperament that can't be changed no matter what. "You slow down." "Okay, right ahead." Not for a while. The two came to a huge basin in the Magic Monkey Mountain. This is equivalent to the plain of the underwater world. On this plain there are actually blooming strange lotus flowers. These lotus flowers are white in appearance. Under the light of the stars, they glow with a strange brilliance and are very beautiful. Even Qin Daoxian had to sigh at the rarity of this beauty. Seeing that Qin Daoxian was shocked by the beauty in front of him, Luo Li smiled and said, "This is a kind of spiritual plant unique to the underwater world of Wangxinghai. We call it the lotus of good fortune, but unfortunately, it was not given to me by you. The elixir in the picture book." Speaking of which, Luo Li's pretty face showed a hint of regret. "Lingji?" Hearing this, Qin Daoxian's heart moved slightly. Any kind of undiscovered spiritual plant has a huge effect. The difference is only whether this function has been developed by the monks. This is a sentence recorded in the Inheritance of Alchemy left by the female cultivator of Izumo. Qin Daoxian agreed. There are no useless spiritual plants, only spiritual plants that have not found a specific usage. It is obviously a white lotus. Why is it called the Lotus of Creation? Qin Daoxian looked at Luo Li with a strange expression and asked. You watch. Luo Li smiled mysteriously. The next moment she suddenly flew to the center of the Lotus Ocean, held up a stream of true essence in her right hand, and then threw the true essence into the air. Suddenly, countless fine true essences were scattered towards the lotus on the ground. The white lotus of good fortune came into contact with Luo Li's true essence. Suddenly exudes a different kind of brilliance. For a while, various brilliance pervades, reflecting the starlight under the starry sky, setting off Luo Li like a goddess under the moon. Looked at this stunning sight. Qin Daoxian only felt that his heart was touched fiercely. Under the sky. The two looked at each other silently, and Luo Li didn't say those words after all. What a nice view. Qin Daoxian said with emotion. What did you say? I said so beautiful. Luo Li smiled happily like a child. Just when Luo Li was swaying his true essence, Qin Daoxian discovered that the lotus of fortune was different. Qin Daoxian discovered that this lotus of good fortune was actually absorbing Luo Li's true essence. This discovery made Qin Daoxian feel a surge of ecstasy. What's wrong with you? Seeing that Qin Daoxian's face changed from a smile to ecstasy, Luo Li stopped what he was doing and flew towards Qin Daoxian. As Luo Li stopped swaying his true essence, the lotus of creation did not lose its luster immediately, but still showed a radiant appearance. Fine. Qin Daoxian stared at one of the lotus of good fortune and observed it carefully. Luo Li, let me ask you, can this lotus of creation absorb your true essence? That's right. It's a pity that this kind of spiritual plant has no effect other than absorbing the monk's true essence. The real essence absorbed by it will be slowly absorbed by itself after being stored for a period of time, turning it into nutrients for growth. Luo Li said as a matter of course. Nothing works. Hearing Luo Li's comment, Qin Daoxian's mouth twitched fiercely. Luo Li actually said that this thing is useless. Taking a deep breath, Qin Daoxian calmed down his excitement. Then he pulled out a lotus of good fortune. What surprised Qin Daoxian was that this lotus of good fortune was not cut off by him. You must know that in addition to being a chi-refining cultivator, Qin Daoxian also practiced body-refining exercises. He has the terrifying power to crush the Canglong with 1 foot. Now even a lotus flower can be pulled out. See you. Qin Daoxian became more interested in this spiritual plant. I saw him take out the flying snow sword and cut off the rhizome of the lotus of fortune with 1 sword. Holding this lotus of good fortune in his hand, Qin Daoxian found that it had not returned to its original white color. Every time you inject real essence into it, how long does it take for the real essence to escape? Who knows? Luo Li shook his head and said, it won't escape, it will only be absorbed by it. What if I don't let it absorb? Qin Daoxian's voice faintly trembled. Luo Li tilted his little head and said timidly, then it is there? Heard this. Qin Daoxian took Luo Li into his arms, gave her a kiss on her pretty face and said excitedly, I love you so much. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.